"We're here," Vera announced as she and Valyr stopped before a modest wooden door. She gently set down the bag she'd been carrying and pushed the door open, revealing the room inside. Valyr peeked into the space, but hesitated, thoughts surfacing. Should I wait outside? Though sparse in furnishings, the room held a warmth to it. A bed occupied one side, topped with a cluster of pillows. Beside it stood a wooden bookshelf, old and worn, its shelves filled with books that looked like they'd seen generations pass. Atop it rested a few framed photographs, one of Vera alone, and others showing her with a woman who bore a strong resemblance to her, likely her older sister. Catching on to Valor's concern, Vera gave a soft, knowing smile and swung the door fully open. Behind it, a neatly arranged alchemy station came into view, a sizable cauldron surrounded by various instruments. She stepped in, grabbed the bag, and gestured for him to follow. "Don't worry. You're welcome to come in. The alchemical gear is here in my quarters because, well, I'm the only one in the village who knows how to use it. Moving it would be a pain." She gave an awkward chuckle, rubbing the back of her head. "Just ignore the mess." Valyr stepped inside, quietly impressed. Vera moved toward the cauldron, setting the bag down beside it before walking to the far side of the room. "Give me a second," she said. "I need to find something." He nodded, his gaze drifting around the room as curiosity took hold. Ignoring the personal side of the room as instructed, he examined the alchemical station more closely. Despite her claims of messiness, Vera's space was surprisingly clean. The instruments were dust-free and well-maintained. She must take meticulous care of these, Valyr thought. Then again, even a single speck of dust could ruin a mixture. It makes sense she be diligent. His eyes lingered on the equipment. But this isn't the kind of gear you'd find in a small village. "Miss Vera," he asked, "did you buy all these instruments yourself?" She glanced back with a wry smile. "I wish. No, they were a gift from my mentor when I became a novice alchemist." "Sounds like a generous teacher," Valyr commented. "She is," Vera said softly, eyes fond. A moment later, she pulled out a dusty box from under her bed, blew the dust away, and rummaged through its contents. Got it." From the box, she retrieved a light gray orb and set it on the floor. After returning the box, she carried the orb to a pedestal near the cauldron. "I hope she's not too busy," Vera murmured, placing her hand over the orb. A pale blue light emerged from her palm and flowed into the sphere. Gradually, a matching light shimmered within the orb until it flared, scattering into confetti-like strands. For a brief moment, an oppressive aura filled the room. Valyr tensed, but quickly relaxed as the energy faded. Then a raspy, amused voice echoed from the orb. Well, look who finally remembered I exist." "Vera," he fidgeted. "I didn't mean to avoid you, mentor. I just thought you might be busy." "Busy? Me? Please." The voice chuckled. "But if you're contacting me out of the blue, I assume it's for something important." Vera exhaled, her nervous energy calming. "It is. Someone asked if I could brew reinforcement elixirs, basic ones for physical and mental enhancement. I told him to find someone else, but he insisted I was the right person for the job." "Of course he did. He clearly has good taste. You learned from me." The woman on the other side laughed. "So, did he just leave you to it?" "Actually, he's right here," Vera replied, turning to Valyr. "Would you mind speaking to her, Sir Valyr?" Valyr scratched his head, then stepped forward. "Hello. Can you hear me?" Loud and clear, the voice responded. "And who might you be?" "Only if you don't mind introducing yourself first," Valyr said cautiously. "You claim to be Vera's mentor, but I hope you understand my wariness." "A careful one. I like that." The voice let out a laugh. "Very well. I'm Mistya Askell, the one who taught that girl everything she knows. Is that sufficient? Or do you want my entire resume?" "That's plenty. Thank you." Valyr gave a small bow. "Askell, same surname as Vera." "Interesting. My name is Valyr Zeihardt. I'm a guard from Astardo village, and I'm the one who asked Miss Vera to concoct the elixirs." There was a pause. Then Mistya muttered softly, "Zeihardt? Could he be?" Thanks to his enhanced senses, Valyr caught her words. "Is something wrong?" No, Mistya said quickly. "Nothing at all." He narrowed his eyes slightly, but let the matter drop. In any case, she said brightly, let's get those elixirs. Vera, darling. Mishja's voice chimed from the orb, drawing her student's attention. Which elixir do you want to start with? The basic physical reinforcement elixir or the basic mental one? Vera glanced at the cauldron, then asked, which one's easier, Mentor? A light chuckle echoed from the orb. A fair question. It's smart to work your way up from the simpler concoctions. Start with the basic physical reinforcement elixir. It's more forgiving. Vera nodded, and Mishja continued without missing a beat. While you fill the cauldron with water, make sure you have the following ready: lizard dragon blood, mountain bull hoof, shadow serpent meat, and scarlet tiger claw. As Vera gathered the ingredients, Mishja addressed Valyr. By the way, Valyr, did you bring ingredients for just one try at each elixir? If so, I'll need to modify the process a bit. No need, Valyr replied. I brought enough for 5 attempts of each. Ideally, all of them succeed, but failure or 2 is fine if it improves her chances in the long run. Mishja was quiet for a moment. Her tone softened. So, you're half a skill you gain from consuming 10 of each elixir. Huh. Valyr crossed his arms. Why do you need to know that, Miss Mishja? Another amused chuckle escaped the orb. Relax. You're acting like someone's out to rob you. I'm not here to steal your secrets. Her tone lightened. Neither I nor Vera will tell anyone what happens here. So was I right? Letting out a short sigh, Valyr nodded. Yes, that's correct. Unlike the elixirs bought in-game, these handcrafted versions granted a permanent skill if consumed 10 times. Not only did the skill amplify the effects of the elixirs, but it also added a bonus to LUK, one of the rarest and most valuable stats in the system. Thought so, Mishja said, sounding satisfied. We can talk about higher-tier versions later. She turned her attention back to Vera. How's the cauldron? Water's boiling, Vera confirmed. Mana's flowing into it steadily. Good. Make sure it doesn't boil over. We're extracting essence, not boiling soup, Mishja reminded her. Now, cut each ingredient into 5 even portions. I can sense how much Valyr brought through the orb, so I'll know if you try to cheat. Understood, Mentor. Vera got to work, her hand steady as she divided the ingredients, setting 1 portion of each by the cauldron and storing the rest. Should I start adding them now? One at a time. Wait until the essence from each is fully drawn before adding the next, Mishja instructed. Once they're all in, cover the cauldron and continue infusing mana to help the essences merge. Vera followed the instructions closely. As each ingredient dissolved into the boiling liquid, the water shimmered and changed color, deeper and more vibrant with every step. With Vera fully occupied, Mishja turned her focus back to Valyr. Since we've got time before the next step, mind a little more conversation? Sure, I guess, Valyr replied cautiously. What exactly do you plan to do with the elixirs? She asked. Consume them to get the skill, like we talked about, he answered. Then move on to stronger versions for the upgraded skill. You've clearly done your research, Mishja said. Her tone shifted, more probing now. But have you considered sharing them? Think about it. You could introduce the elixirs to your village, raise its overall strength, maybe even start a monopoly. The profit potential is massive. Valyr narrowed his eyes slightly. Is she trying to persuade me into triggering a quest? He wondered. He'd already thought through everything Mishja mentioned. But for now, his goal was clear: gain power, stay low, and prepare for what was to come. I appreciate the suggestion, but I'll keep them to myself for now, he replied calmly. There may come a time when I share them, but not yet. Fair enough. Mishja's tone lost a bit of its luster, though she quickly rebounded. Still, I'm curious. How do you even know about the reinforcement elixirs? Only a handful in the cities are even aware they exist. And I have a theory, but I'd like to hear it from you. Valyr paused for a beat before answering vaguely. Let's just say I'm from a far-off place and settled here after joining the village guard. Will that suffice? A moment of silence. Then Mishja replied with a hint of amusement. That'll do. She turned her attention back to her student. Vera, is the mana infusion going smoothly? Yes, Mentor. Should I keep going until I hear a sound? Exactly. Keep the mana steady. Once you hear the cauldron react, That'll signal completion. Understood. That's pretty much how you brew a basic physical reinforcement elixir. Mischa continued. The ingredients are all similar in nature, so melding them is relatively easy once essence extraction is complete. Got it, Vera said. What about the basic mental version? We'll go over that once we begin, Mischa replied. Right now, I think your concoction is nearly... Boom! An abrupt explosion burst from the cauldron, the ground trembling slightly beneath their feet. Valyr instinctively stepped back, eyes wide. But Vera simply smiled. Congratulations, Valyr, Mischa announced with pride in her voice. The first attempt was a success.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
As Vera removed the lid off the cauldron, the strong metallic scent of blood quickly wafted throughout, prompting one to think that a massacre had taken place in her sleeping quarters if one were to smell it. Knowing the implications of such a smell, Vera skillfully created a bubble of mana above her cauldron, catching most of the scent that had wafted out as she grabbed an empty vial from a nearby box. Removing the stopper from the vial, she then manipulated the bubble of mana above the cauldron to transform into a scoop of sorts, carefully removing the contents that remained inside the cauldron before moving it into the vial. Soon, a viscous red liquid filled up the inside of the vial to about halfway, with Vera putting the stopper back on once she was certain there was nothing in the cauldron left. Placing the filled vial aside, she then rubbed her hands to quell some of the excitement she felt as she started her second attempt. And with that, a few hours had unknowingly passed. Enamored and slightly intrigued by the entire process, Valyr silently watched Vera do her thing as if he was in a slight trance. In the meantime, Mischa's voice would resound from the ore from time to time, informing Vera of a few movements she could have done better or a few things she could have added to make the process more efficient. Eventually, Vera had gone through all 5 attempts of concocting basic physical reinforcement elixir, surprisingly only failing one as 4 vials with red liquid were placed neatly on a nearby desk. As to how one attempt had failed, Vera asked her mentor if she could do one attempt on her own without her mentor's advice, which allowed the previous successes to get to her head as she became slightly overconfident. Because of that slight overconfidence, she had ruined the balance of the concoction as a faint fizzle resounded from the cauldron. With the basic physical reinforcement elixirs concocted, she then moved on with concocting the basic mental reinforcement elixirs. According to Mischa, the latter was slightly more difficult to concoct due to the fact that the nature of the materials were clashing against one another. With that in mind, the alchemist would have to manipulate the extracted essences in a way that a harmonious balance could be achieved. In fact, this was the reason why Vera had failed her first attempt at concocting the elixir as she recalled her previous bout of overconfidence, causing her to lack the level of control necessary for the essences to harmonize and meld with one another. Because of this blunder, Vera had received an earful from Mischa, which only made Valyr become even more silent, making a mental note to always be on her mentor's good side. Fortunately, after that mistake, the next 4 attempts at concocting basic mental reinforcement elixir were a success, with Vera making sure that she didn't allow her emotions to affect the entire process. By the time she had gone through all 10 attempts, the sun was already at its peak. Placing the 4 vials of red liquid and dark blue liquid into the bag she had been given earlier, a light yet satisfied smile could be seen on Vera's face as she gave the bag back to Valyr. Here you go, Sir Valyr. 4 vials of basic physical reinforcement elixir, as well as 4 vials of basic mental reinforcement elixir. Receiving the bag with a nod, Valyr took a short look at the vials in the bag as a light smile adorned his face. I knew I made the right choice to trust you. I'm pretty sure even experienced alchemists would have a hard time doing what you just did. I just followed the guidance of my mentor, Vera said in response, lightly scratching her slightly flushed cheeks. If anything, she should be the one you should be thanking. That was all you, dear. Surprisingly, Mischa was of the same opinion as Valyr. I only taught you the recipe. Even though I gave you a bit of advice from time to time, that was all you, Vera. In any case, I'm pretty sure this man right here will come back here at a later time to have more of the elixirs concocted, so you better polish your alchemy skills, she said, chuckling. Is that right, Valyr? Well, you're definitely not wrong. Valyr chuckled as well. After that, he went silent for a bit as he looked at the inside of the bag once more. Scratching his head, he eventually took out a vial of red and blue liquid before giving it to Vera. Here, as a token of gratitude for fulfilling my request, take this. But these are your materials. This is too precious. I can't take them. Naturally, Vera was surprised by Valyr's sudden action, waving her hands back and forth in refusal. They may be my materials, but they wouldn't serve me any purpose if not for the fact you turned them into what I needed, Valyr said in response, his expression now somewhat stern. Please, take it. But, just as Vera was about to refuse once more, Mishcha's voice echoed from the orb once more. Just take it, Vera. Think of it as him wanting to foster a better relationship with you, she told Vera. After all, if he's not heading to a nearby town to have it concocted, you'll be the one he'll be asking to concoct them. Hearing those words come from her mentor, her cheeks turned slightly red as she inwardly let out a light sigh, receiving both vials with her head slightly down. Seeing as Vera had taken the vials, Valyr could not help but nod in slight satisfaction. With that out of the way, how much do I have to pay you for the service? There's no need for that anymore, Sir Valyr, Vera politely declined. The experience I've obtained from concocting the elixirs, as well as these vials you've given me, are more than enough payment for me. Are you sure? Although Valyr did not mind paying for the service, even after he gave her a couple vials, Vera nodded in response. Yes, she told him. If you still feel like paying me back, how about having me concoct more elixirs for you? In response to those words, Valyr let out a bit of laughter before nodding in agreement. All right then, I'll make sure to come find you once I get another batch of materials. With that, Valyr waved farewell to Vera as he left the clinic, leaving both Vera and Mishcha alone. You should form a closer relationship with that Valyr boy, Mishcha said all of a sudden, which Vera found surprising. After all, it was rare for her mentor to be interested in a person. Why is that, mentor? Vera asked soon after. Although it doesn't seem like it, he's actually... As he walked out of the clinic, Valyr could not help but look around as he was walking, deciding to take a detour into a secluded alleyway. Once there, he dropped the bag on the ground before retrieving a vial of red liquid from it. Removing the stopper on the vial, he then went ahead and downed all of its contents, feeling a burning sensation quickly envelop his body. Ding! Your VIT has increased by 1 point. Your STR has increased by 1 point. Your AGI has increased by 1 point. Your DX has increased by 1 point. You have completed part of the quest requirements. As the burning sensation gradually disappeared, he then retrieved a vial of blue liquid from the bag before downing its contents as well. Soon, a cooling sensation coursed throughout his body, which mostly concentrated around his upper region. Ding! Your INT has increased by 1 point. Your WIS has increased by 1 point. Your PER has increased by 1 point. You have completed the quest. Head to Tristan to receive your rewards. Checking the notification he had received, a grin could be seen on his face as he downed the remaining vials in the bag. Now we're finally getting somewhere. With a bag containing empty vials slung over his right shoulder, Valyr had a wide smile on his face as he made his way to the village smithy. While on his way, he could not help but be curious about his current stats. After all, even though he had consumed 3 vials of each elixir, the changes were quite subdued due to his current level, unlike the substantial change he felt once he had gone from level 1 to level 2. Ding! With that, he opened up his stats screen, somewhat pleasantly surprised that he was only 1 point shy from reaching the double-digit mark on most of his stats. Valyr Zeihardt. Class: Civilian, Rank 0. Species: Human. Level: 6. Power level: 99C. Unused XP: 301. HP: 90 out of 90. MP: 90 of 90. Stats: 9 BIT, 9 STR, 9 AGI, 9 DX, 9 INT, 9 WS, 9 PR, 6 LUK, 6 unassigned points. Remarks: If I were you, I'd try adding up my stats. It's quite a nice surprise, if you know what I mean. Seeing how effective the elixirs were in boosting his stats, he could not help but imagine the time he had consumed 10 of each elixir type, allowing his stats to undergo a substantial increase. Wondering how strong he would be once the time, he continued to make his way to the smithy. Ding! Your affinity with Vera has increased by 100 points. Current relationship, acquaintance. Wasn't the maximum affinity around 1,000 points or so? Valyr could not help but mutter to himself, slightly stupefied at the increase in affinity with Vera. Although he expected his affinity with Vera to increase with the kind gestures he had shown her, never in his wildest dreams did he expect it to increase this much. After all, an increase of this level was only achievable through a couple special quests, and he didn't even have a quest related to her. Nevertheless, even though he was curious as to why his affinity with her increased so much, he decided to put the matter at the back of his head for now, considering it a lucky omen for what was about to come. With that, he increased his pace, utilizing most of his AGI to shorten the time it took for him to reach the smithy. Growl. I should really grab something to eat along the way. By the time the sun had gone past its peak, Valyr stood in front of the entrance of the village smithy, noticing that Tristan was hard at work once he took a peek inside. Deciding to take a few steps in while waiting for Tristan to finish, the latter turned his head around like an owl, as if he was already expecting Valyr to appear. Placing the hammer he held on top of the anvil, Tristan got up from his seat before lightly stretching his back. Making his way to where Valyr was, he could not help but say, "To think you would exceed all expectations and reach my requirements in just 1 week. Are you that eager to start learning blacksmithing or something?" "To be honest, I'm quite surprised I was able to complete your quest this early as well," said Valyr, feigning ignorance to the question hidden beneath Tristan's words. Lightly chuckling, he continued, "However, I am quite eager to learn how to forge." All right. Nodding in response to those words, a screen popped up in front of Tristan as he interacted with it for a bit. "Since you've kept your part of the deal, it's time for me to uphold mine. Though, of course, I'll be adding a bit more extra. After all, great efforts beget great rewards." Ding! As the screen in front of Tristan closed, a couple notifications resounded within Valyr's mind, prompting him to open up his notification screen. However, rather than be greeted by a couple of notifications, a string of notifications instead bombarded him, its contents bringing a light grin to his face. You have completed the quest Tristan's Trial. Remaining time, 12 days, 10 hours, 34 minutes, 12 seconds. Due to your exemplary performance, the quest giver has decided to double your rewards. Your affinity with Tristan has increased by 60 points. Current relationship, acquaintance. Your reputation in Astardo village has increased by 100 points. Current reputation, slightly well-known. You have received 2,000 XP. Talk to Tristan to gain early access to the technology tree. Satisfied with the notifications he had received, Valyr went ahead and closed the screen before looking at the man in front of him. Noticing the meaning hidden beneath the gaze, Tristan could not help but wryly smile as he asked, "I'm guessing you want me to unlock the technology tree, huh? All right then, come with me for a bit." Saying his piece, Tristan moved closer to the furnace as Valyr followed him from behind. Eventually, Valyr felt the scorching heat radiating from the furnace, making him close his eyes for a bit as he reminisced over his past memories when the warmth of the furnace would embrace for hours and days on end. Seeing as Valyr had no reaction to the heat from the furnace, even going so far as to seemingly enjoy it, Tristan could not help but think, "I think I got my hands on an unpolished gem here." Snapping his fingers to return Valyr back to reality, Tristan went ahead and asked a question Valyr already knew the answer to. "Now, before I unlock the technology tree for you, what's your understanding of blacksmithing?" "Blacksmithing is a craft normally neglected by many, but it's what I consider the foundation for the civilizations we've come to live in," Valyr said, just as Tristan was finished talking, making the latter's eyes widen in surprise. "Sure, it may be a thankless job, just like any other occupation, but unlike the other occupations, it's what allowed us to be who we are today. If not for blacksmithing, we would still be vying for dominance with other species. Although most of these words came from the description of the blacksmith class he had gotten in his previous life, Valyr felt like it was the best way to describe the class as a whole. In fact, he wholeheartedly agreed with the statement, knowing very well how many people relied on blacksmiths without them knowing. After a moment of silence, Tristan placed his hands on Valyr's shoulders, looking at him directly in the eye with a fervent expression. Profusely nodding in agreement, he said, "Yes, yes, yes. That's exactly what blacksmithing is. Although it has been forgotten by many, it is the cornerstone of our civilization. And here I thought I'd never find someone as passionate as I am when it comes to blacksmithing," he continued, sniffling from the slight upheaval of emotions he had experienced. Taking a few deep breaths to calm himself down, he then gazed at Valyr once more. "Let's unlock that technology tree, shall we?" Whoosh! In an instant, a faint gray light started to radiate out of Tristan's body, gradually making its way to Valyr's body as it coalesced around his forehead. Soon, a small ball of gray light hovered a few centimeters away from his forehead, only to ram into it and disappear as a great influx of information quickly filled Valyr's mind. Fortunately, as he was used to receiving multiple influxes of information in the past, Valyr quickly sorted the information he had received as a notification sound resounded not long after. Ding! Tristan Melfon, Rank 2 Class, Experienced Blacksmith, has given you a key to access the technology tree. Congratulations! You have gained access to the technology tree. Due to your current class, your access to the technology tree has been limited to basic level advancements. Please ascend to a higher class as soon as possible. Just as Valyr was reading through the notifications he received, Tristan told him something. Now that you have access to the technology tree, you could choose to learn blacksmithing on your own and just come to me for technology points. Though, if you were to ask me, that would just be a huge waste of your talent. With that, how about you learn blacksmithing from me? Rather than rely on guesswork to get to the same point, I could you teach everything you need to know about blacksmithing and make sure you have a solid foundation, he suggested, to which Valyr nodded in response as he closed the screen in front of him. Seeing Valyr agree to the suggestion, Tristan could not help but let out a chuckle. All right then, since you're going to be learning under me, we'll be going through the basics first. But before that, I want you to do something for me. Ding! You have received a new quest. An experienced blacksmith suggestion 1. Receiving a notification that he had obtained a quest, Valyr went ahead and read through its description. However, by the end of it, a frown could not help but creep up his face as he thought to himself, "Are you kidding me? What's the point of the previous quest, then?" Ding! An experienced blacksmith suggestion 1. Linked quest, time-limited quest. Difficulty C. Tristan is quite surprised that you've met his minimum requirements within a week. Because of that, he thinks that you have a lot of potential hidden within you, just waiting to be unearthed. Although he's quite eager to help you unearth this potential, he wants you to focus on polishing your foundation first before letting you to start trekking the arduous path of blacksmithing. Of course, he knows how much you want to start as soon as possible, the impassioned explanation you've given him earlier still vivid in his mind. Nevertheless, he's adamant that you shouldn't be hasty, giving up long-term stability for short-term gains. To make up for this, he'll greatly reward you for the effort you put in if you achieve his requirements. That is, requirements. Reach level 10, 6 out of 10. Reach either a DX or INT stat of 15, 9/15. Quest rewards. Affinity plus 50 with Tristan. Reputation plus 150 within Astardo Village. 2,500 XP. 15 technology points. Analysis LV1. Quest penalty. Affinity minus 50 with Tristan. Reputation minus 150 within Astardo Village. Removal of access to the technology tree. Level minus 2. Remaining time, 14 days. Note, depending on your performance, the rewards of your current and subsequent quests may improve, or the quest giver may opt to stop the linked quest altogether. The reward for this quest is great. Experience, technology points, and even the skill I want to get, Valyr thought to himself. the frown on his face deepening even further. However, I can't help but have a sour taste in my mouth when I look at these requirements. With the previous quest Valyr got from Tristan needing him to raise his stats to 7 points, the quest that the latter just gave to him seemed redundant in his eyes, considering that both quests needed him to raise his level if he didn't know any other methods to increase his stats. Aside from that, Valyr could clearly recall that the quest he had previously accepted was for him to reach the minimum requirements Tristan had in mind before one could start blacksmithing. With all of that in mind, he could not help but wonder as to why he was given a quest that needed him to increase his stats once again. Curious, Valyr went ahead and asked this question to Tristan, trying his best not to yell at the person who would be teaching him how to forge. In response to the question, a light smile appeared on Tristan's face as he explained, "Well, the answer to that is simple. The stats I made you reach before giving you this current quest is the minimum requirements I consider one should have before starting on the path of blacksmithing. On the other hand, this quest will need you to bring your stats up to what I consider the ideal requirements one should have. Although there's not much difference between a stat of 7 and a stat of 10 in terms of what one can achieve in the early stages, having a lower stat tends to make you form bad habits while forging. Think of it as your body's natural mechanism to compensate for the lower stat," he said. On the other hand, having a stat of 10 allows you to do all of the basic movements in forging without having to need to compensate for anything. Sure, you might say that a person can just unlearn all of those bad habits once they become stronger, but you know that's easier said than done. Does that answer your question? As Tristan said those words, Valyr responded with a solemn nod, not expecting to get a serious answer out of it. However, even though the response Tristan gave did answer his question, that was not the type of answer he wanted to hear. He wanted to know why he got another quest that required him to level up just after he finished one. With that, he decided to be more blunt in his questioning. Although that's actually not the answer I wanted to get. Instead, I want to know why you gave me another quest that needs me to level up, even though I've just finished one. Ah. At first, Tristan was slightly confused by what Valyr meant that. Though, after a short moment of silence, everything clicked in his mind as he looked at Valyr with a calm expression. "Oh, that. Here's the thing, Valyr. You were the one who told me that you could reach my minimum requirements with 2 weeks, so I gave you a quest that needed you to do that in response, thinking that you would be more motivated in doing so. Although you did complete the quest, and I'm quite surprised you did it in less than half the time I gave you, I wasn't pressuring you whatsoever to do that whole thing. In fact, I would have been fine waiting for you to reach level 7 at your own pace, and I would have probably given you the same quest you just got," he told him. "In short, you did that to yourself, not me." Just as Valyr was about to say something in response to Tristan's words, he could not help but go silent, recalling everything that had transpired this past week. Eventually, he came to the conclusion that he did do that to himself, prompting him to shake his head as he noticed Tristan looking at him. Never mind. At this moment, a slightly awkward atmosphere surrounded the two of them, with Valyr slightly fidgeting around to remove the feeling of awkwardness he felt. Taking a glance at Tristan, who seemed to be waiting for him to say something else while looking at his smithy, Valyr could not help but recall one of the notifications he had received from the system, specifically the ones pertaining to the early access of the technology tree. "Moving the previous topic aside, I actually have another question to ask you," said Valyr as he scratched his head. Tristan raised his eyebrow in response. "And that would be, do you actually have a rank 2 class?" Valyr asked. "Well, I did get a notification from the system telling me that you have a rank 2 class, but I just wanted to hear it from you directly. After all, according to the guards, the strongest people in this village are only at the peak of their rank 1 class." "That would actually be correct, if you asked me 2 weeks ago," Tristan replied. "In fact, I think you're the first one in the village to find out that I have a rank 2 class. It would be great if you don't talk about it with the others for a bit more, but I wouldn't be surprised if you did. In any case, any blacksmith you see in a village that owns their own smithy has a rank 2 blacksmith class most of the time. Rarely would they ever have a smithy at the peak of rank 1. Me 2 weeks ago being a good example of that," he continued. "That's because rank 0 and rank 1 blacksmiths are considered greenhorns by most, if not all, veteran blacksmiths. Only when they ascend to a rank 2 class could they be considered a true blacksmith that could carry their own weight. Either way, that's something I'll explain to you in due time. For now, focus on reaching level 10 within 2 weeks. With that, Tristan gestured Valyr to head out the door. I'm sure you can do that with your monstrous talent. But if you don't, say goodbye to being level 7 for a while. With a light chuckle, Tristan sat in front of his anvil before picking up his hammer to continue with work. On the other hand, Valyr looked at Tristan for a bit before turning around to leave the village smithy as he made his way back to the barracks. Oh, right, the quest actually had, by the time he had returned to the barracks, it was already well into the afternoon. As Valyr did not have any other plans for the day other than meeting up with Vera to get the elixirs concocted, as well as meet up with Tristan after his quest was completed, he decided to head straight to the dorm and get some well-needed rest until the time for night patrols came up. With the routine Valyr had gone through the past week, he thought that he deserved to get that much rest. However, as if it was destined to happen, a man Valyr rarely saw appeared in front of his field of vision just as he was about to head to the corridor that led to the dormitory. Naturally, the man noticed Valyr's presence as well, looking at him in the eye as his expression turned to that of slight relief. "Oh, Valyr, just the man I was trying to look for, actually. Is there anything you need from me, Damien?" Valyr asked in response, noticing the somewhat relieved expression on Damien's face. Damien nodded. "There is. To be honest, I kind of feel bad for asking you about this, since it's only been a week and a half after you've arrived here. However, we need all the help we can get. Valyr raised his eyebrow as he scratched his cheeks. "What's wrong?" Taking in a deep breath, Damien let out a long sigh before explaining. "It's like this. In about a week or so, a monster tide is going to hit this village." "A monster tide?" Hearing these words come out of Damien's mouth, Valyr's eyes could not help but widen in shock, recalling how dangerous monster tides were. From the name itself, monster tides were events where a great number of monsters would attack a settlement like a tide, its goal nothing more than to destroy the settlement it collided with. Although players and NPCs alike have speculated that there was a greater reason as to why these monster tides happened, such as the world trying to maintain a precarious balance between people and monsters, everyone knew that they had to fend off against the tide if they didn't want to end up becoming homeless or worse, dead. "Yes, a monster tide," Damien replied with a nod. "We've recruited everyone with rank 1 classes to aid the village guards in defending against the monster tide, although we've also been recruiting all of the able-bodied people who want to volunteer and help out in the cause. We need as much help as we can get for a matter like this. After all, in any case, this is actually the main reason why the village guards was established. Our main purpose is to help the village defend against monster tides. After all, one is enough to remove the village off the map," he continued. Just as he was about to continue persuading Valyr to help out in the monster tide, he could not help but notice that Valyr had grown stronger yet again, giving off the feeling that he was nearing a rank 1 class holder in terms of power. When he first arrived here, he was only level 1. How'd he get this strong in just a week and a half? Although Damien was curious as to how Valyr had achieved his current level of strength, he placed the matter at the back of his head for now, thinking that Valyr would be able to contribute more than the others just from the power he sensed from him so far. As monster tides were events that signified a lot of danger, that meant that a plethora of rewards awaited those who helped and survived the ordeal. In fact, that alone was enough reason for Valyr to accept, thinking about the possible things he could obtain if he participated. However, he did not want to make it seem like he was too eager about the calamitous event, deciding to mull over it for a bit. "Do we know how big the monster tide is?" "Originally, it was a medium-scale monster tide," Damien told him. "However, with the monster tide coming from afar, portions of the tide separated from the original tide and attacked the settlements they passed through, gradually making the tide smaller with each separation. Best case scenario, we'll be facing up against a small-scale monster tide. Worst case, a small-scale monster tide nearing medium scale." "I see," Valyr nodded, recalling everything else he could remember about monster tides. "If I remember correctly, small-scale monster tides are capable of demolishing villages, while medium-scale monster tides are capable of demolishing towns." On top of that, the strongest monster in a small-scale tide is on par with the strongest person one could find in a village. Well, that's not good. Taking in a deep breath, Valyr looked at Damien before nodding. All right, I'll help out in defending the monster tide. Thank the heavens, replied Damien, letting out a light sigh of relief. Looking at Valyr with a more relieved expression than before, he told him, of course, your efforts in helping us defend against the monster tide won't go unnoticed. As he said that, a screen appeared before Damien as he interacted with it for a while. After that, a notification sound resounded in Valor's mind, prompting him to check what Damien had sent him. Ding! You have received a new quest, Monster Tide. Monster Tide, Emergency Quest. Difficulty, C. In a week, a small to medium-scale monster tide shall pass through Astardo village, with the village taking the brunt of it. Because of that, Damien and the others have been recruiting all of the help they could get in the village in order to defend against the calamity. You have decided to volunteer in helping the others defend against the monster tide, which the others will naturally thank you for. However, don't go thinking your efforts will go unnoticed. Rewards far greater than your wildest imaginations await you if you put in the work. Requirements. Help defend against the monster tide, 0/1. Make sure at least 50% of the village remains intact, 100% greater than 50%. Quest rewards, 50 contribution points, Astardo Village Guards, 25 merit points, Astardo Village Guards, and 50 XP per kill, maximum of 1,000 kills. Reputation plus 500 within Astardo Village. Quest penalty. Reputation minus 100 within Astardo Village, level -1. Note, this quest shall automatically appear in 7 days. Per kill. As his eyes focused on the reward section of the quest, Valyr could not help but go wide-eyed, considering that he could possibly earn up to 50,000 XP if he was able to kill 1,000 monsters. However, what piqued his interest even more was the amount of contribution points he could stand to earn. After all, if he killed 20 monsters in the tide, he would have enough contribution points to buy 2 of the other skills he needed for his rank 1 class. With the possibility to earn more, only the heavens knew what he was able to buy. Closing up the screen, Valyr looked at Damien, who looked back at him with a slight smirk on his face. I'm guessing you noticed the rewards. Yes. Valyr nodded. However, I'll only be able to earn a lot if I kill a lot. That is indeed true. Damien nodded in agreement. Just as Valyr thought that their conversation would end there, a screen appeared in front of Damien once more as he tapped on it for a bit. Since you've only been in this village for a week, think of this as an apology and a gift from me. Use it wisely. Ding! You have received 500. Naturally, Valyr wasn't expecting to obtain something like this, thinking that the rewards from the quest was more than enough. With that in mind, he looked at Damien directly in the eye, telling the latter through his gaze that he wanted to know the reason behind the great amount of contribution points he had just received. In response to the gaze he received, Damien could only shrug his shoulders. Although the village guards have been made for the purpose of defending against the monster tides, not everyone joined the guards with that in mind. Because of that, less than half of the guards in our ranks volunteered to help out in defending against the monster tide. To show my gratitude to those who've decided to volunteer, I've decided to give contribution points for them to spend however they like. Now, you might be wondering at this point if the others got the same amount of contribution points as you. As he those words, Damien shook his head. The answer to that is no. Unlike you, they've grown up in the village and became village guards for the reason of protecting the village. You, on the other hand, might have joined the village guards for other reasons. Nevertheless, you still opted to help the village out in a time of need, which is why I gave you that much. Is there anything else you want to ask me? If not, I'll be leaving. I still have to recruit more people, he asked not long after, to which Valyr nodded in response. Actually, I was wondering if I could get a map of the general area around Astardo village, replied Valyr. It doesn't have to be incredibly detailed. It just needs to have information of nearby villages and other places I should keep in mind. Hearing those words, Damien quickly brought out his screen, interacting with it once more for a bit before closing it not long after. There you go. Normally, Information like what you requested would have cost you around 50 contribution points. But as I've mentioned before, since you're helping the village out in a time of need, think of it as a gift from me. Ding! You have received geographical information of Astardo village and its surroundings. A minimum threshold has been surpassed. The world map has been unlocked. As Damien waved farewell at Valyr, as he gradually moved farther away from him, Valyr could not help but look at the notifications he had received for a bit before closing his screen sometime later. Just as he was about to wave back at Damien, he noticed that Damien was already long gone, making him scratch his head before deciding to continue heading back to the dormitory. Once he was back at his room, he placed everything he had brought along with him on the floor before heading to the bathroom to take a quick shower. Coming out of the shower after changing into a new set of clothes, he then went ahead and laid down on his bed, letting his body bask in the warm rays of the sun peering through the window. Letting out a yawn, he then opened up the contribution point shop, his mind already set on where he was going to spend a great portion of the contribution points he received. Ding! You have bought 2 vials of lizard dragon blood. You have bought 2 pieces of mountain bull hoof. You have bought 2 vials of wise rabbit essence. In less than an instant, a great number of items fell beside where he laid, prompting him to sit up and grab the bag he had placed on the floor. Removing the empty vials that were inside, he then placed all of the materials he had bought into it before setting the bag aside. Hopefully this is enough for her to concoct enough vials of elixir for me to get that skill, he muttered before returning his attention to the screen in front of him. I still have 230 contribution points left. What should I buy? Oh, right, I should buy some skills, Valyr said to himself, recalling the main reason why he had asked Damien for a map of the general surroundings. Back when he was still killing monsters for a week straight, the time it took for him to find a monster at the same level as him gradually increased the higher his level went. By the time he had reached level 5, the time it took to find 20 similarly level monsters had gotten so long that he only finished once the sun had already gone past its peak. Although he had a feeling that he would still be able to find monsters at level 6 roaming around the village outskirts, he was certain that it would take him at least 10 times as long to find one compared to killing one. With that, he thought about getting a map, wanting to find a new area where he could kill monsters without having to worry about searching for one. Opening up another screen beside the contribution point shop, a stylized map of the village and its surroundings soon appeared on the newly opened screen, prompting Valyr to zoom out of the map to gain a general idea of where he currently was and how far a certain place was. The nearest town from this village is Zasmal Town, located about 200 kilometers to the north. Considering how much distance a carriage can trek in a day, it would take me about 3 to 4 days to go one way, so a week if it was a round trip. As Valyr was voicing out his thoughts, he could not help but inwardly let out a sigh of relief. It's a good thing I trusted my guts and had Vera concoct those elixirs. If not, the rewards from that quest wouldn't have been doubled. No, wait. I was supposed to be looking for a new leveling area. Refocusing his thoughts, Valyr searched through the map once more, reducing his scope to places that were near Astardo village and the other villages. Fortunately, it did not take long for him to find a place that suited his needs. Found it. A leveling area that houses monsters around level 8 to 15 and is only about 10 kilometers away from this village, Valyr muttered, nodding in satisfaction at what he had found. Although it wouldn't be much of a problem for me to head to the area and return at night, it'll be easier for me to just stay at the nearest village. After all, the nearest village is just a couple kilometers away from the area. Macaroni Forest. Guess I'll be staying there for a while until I reach level 10. Valyr muttered to himself as he closed up the screen with the map, returning his attention back to the contribution point shop he had left open. Since I want to maximize the speed at which I kill monsters, I should really get some active skills, he murmured, heading to the shop's skill tab. I should also probably get a movement skill if I still have points left over. Nope, not that one, not that either. Found it. Ding. Pierce. Rarity, common. A skill capable of dealing damage through a thrusting motion. Best used with a spear or a rapier. Increasing the skill's level increases the amount of damage the skill deals. Prerequisites. Guard rank, a spear or rapier. Cost, 200 contribution points. Although the description of the skill in the contribution point shop was more or less bare bones, Valyr could vividly recall the times he used the skill in his previous life, evolving it to a point where it was indistinguishable from its original version. Even though it was an incredibly basic offensive skill, if all things were considered, to Valyr, it was the skill that fit his needs the most at the moment, as well as one of the best skills he could get that would pair greatly with his regained combat experience. With that in mind, Valyr bought the skill from the shop without hesitation, leaving him with 30 contribution points to spare. Ding! You have gained the active skill Pierce. Seeing as he didn't have any more points to buy anything significant, Valyr went ahead and closed up the contribution point shop, commanding the system soon after to bring up the description of the skill he had just received. Ding! Pierce, level 1/10. Rarity, common. A skill capable of dealing damage with a quick thrust. Best paired with a spear or a rapier. Deals 105% damage based on the user's attack stat. Cost, 10 MP. Cooldown, 5 seconds. Just like how I remembered it, Valyr murmured to himself, feeling great joy at obtaining a skill that he had considered one of his bread and butter skills. Although the attack stat wasn't a stat that couldn't normally be seen on one status screen, it was generally understood by players and NPCs alike that it was a combination of the person's STR stat and the damage the weapon dealt. In fact, the defense stat worked the same way as well, being a combination of the person's VIT stat and the defense modifier of the equipment the person wore. Closing up the description screen, he then brought up his status screen, focusing his attention on the line that told him how much unused XP he had remaining. I currently have over 2,000 XP. Huh? Then again, most of the unused XP I have right now came from completing Tristan's quest. Should I save this XP for the next level up, or should I spend it on leveling up my skills by a couple levels? He asked himself, only to come to a decision not long after. With the disparity between my current level and the monsters, I'll probably get all of the XP back I spent on the skills within a day, perhaps even more. Ding! Would you like to spend 958 XP to upgrade Basic Spear Mastery to level 3? Would you like to spend 958 XP to upgrade Pierce to level 3? Yes. Accepting the prompts that had appeared in front of his vision as he had come to a decision, Valyr felt a small surge of information enter his mind not long after, making him take a quick glance at the wooden spear that was on the floor. While looking at it, he felt like the connection between him and the spear had marginally improved. At the same time, he felt the urge to pick it up and thrust it with all his strength, only for that urge to die down not long after. Taking in a deep breath to calm himself down, he went ahead and checked how much the skills had improved after upgrading them by a couple levels. For Basic Spear Mastery, the amount of increased damage he dealt with the spear had gone up from 1% to 3%. On the other hand, the damage modifier for Pierce had increased from 105% to 115% after upgrading to level 3. Satisfied with the small yet significant changes to the skills he now owned, Valyr took a look outside and noticed that there was still some time before he had to participate in the night patrol. Closing his eyes, he decided to take a nap, only to wake up a couple hours later. Scratching his head as he stifled a yawn, Valyr slowly made his way to the entrance, somewhat regretting the fact that he woke up. Nevertheless, with him in uniform and his wooden spear affixed to his back, he looked more than ready to take part. By the time he had arrived at the entrance, he noticed that 3 people were already waiting there. However, rather than people he only became acquaintances with, the 3 people ahead of him were familiar, being the people he talked on a daily basis. Becoming slightly more awake than before, Valyr hastened his steps as he waved at the trio. Leon, Jonas, Louis. Oh, if it isn't Valyr. Hearing Valyr's voice echo out from the corridor, Leon could not help but let out a chuckle as he waved back. Soon after, Jonas and Louis waved back as well with light smiles on their faces. Once he had arrived where they were, Valyr went ahead and struck up a conversation with the 3. Were you 3 of you approached by Damien already regarding the oncoming monster tide? Yeah, Jonas said with a nod, Leon and Louis nodding soon after. Since the main reason why we joined the village guards was because we wanted to protect the village we were born in, we agreed to it in a heartbeat. How about you, Valyr? Louis asked soon after. Did you agree to help out in the monster tide? Well, it would make sense if you didn't. You've only been here for a week or so, after all. I did. Valyr nodded, letting out a bit of laughter soon after. Who could say no to those rewards? Plus, it's a good way for me to test my newfound strength. Newfound strength. Hearing those words, Leon could not help but raise his eyebrow, only to sense that the pressure he felt for Valyr had grown significantly stronger. Holy shit, Valyr. How the hell did you get so strong in just a span of a day? As Leon blurted out those words, Jonas and Louis went ahead and checked Valyr's strength as well, their eyes widening in shock. In response to those words, Valyr let out a chuckle and shrugged his shoulders as he walked outside. Who knows? Perhaps someone with a high class passed by me and took interest in my talent. Bah, as if that would happen. After a slight skirmish between Valyr and the others, with Valyr surprisingly winning thanks to his higher strength, the four continued on with their night patrol, returning to the barracks by the time the moon had reached its peak. Changing into a set of loose-fitting clothes after taking a shower, Valyr laid down on his bed once more and closed his eyes, resting up for what he was about to do later. Once the sun's rays pierced through his window once more, rather than complain about waking up so early, Valyr was quite alert, going through his usual morning routine before grabbing breakfast from the cafeteria. After that, he went to the training field to become accustomed with his upgraded skills, noticing that the man who had a unique method of practicing the spear was already there. After an hour had passed, Valyr left the training field, satisfied to have worked up a sweat. However, rather than head back to his dormitory to take a shower and rest for a bit, he instead made his way to the other side of the building, eventually arriving in front of the door that led to Damien's office. Knock, 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 come in. Hearing the deep voice on the other side of the door, Valyr inwardly nodded to himself as he swung the door open, closing it behind him soon after as he met up with Damien face-to-face once more. Oh, it's you, Damien said, a light yet perfunctory smile adorning his face. After Valyr had agreed to help the village out in defending against the monster tide, even though he hadn't been part of the village for that long, he could not help but have a generally good impression of the man before him. What is it that I can help you with? I was actually wondering if I could ask you for permission over something, Valyr said in response, prompting Damien to raise his eyebrow. Well then, that's not something you'd hear on the daily, Damien could not help but say. Looking at Valyr in the eye, he continued, as long as the request isn't too much of an inconvenience, I'll give you the green light. It's like this actually. Listening to Damien's response, Valyr inwardly let out a sigh of relief, relaying his request to the former. I wanted to ask for your permission if I could head out of the village for a few days. Where would you be going, if I might ask? Asked Damien in response. Klaus Village, Valyr succinctly replied. Although Klaus Village seemed like a random place for Valyr to mention, this village was, in fact, the village that was situated closest to Macaroni Forest. According to the plan he had come up with last night, he would head out to Macaroni Forest in the morning and the afternoon to fight against monsters in a bid to gain XP. Then, once night fell, he would return to Klaus Village and take a rest there, repeating the process until he reached level 10. Of course, Damien had no clue as to what was going on in Valyr's mind, so it was no surprise that he shook his head after hearing where Valyr was planning to go. Normally, I wouldn't have minded even if you went out on a journey to the nearest city. However, with the threat of the monster tide looming over us, I don't want to risk losing another person before the tide even starts. But, scratching his head, Valyr could not help but let out a light sigh. Even though he knew he had the ability to return to Astardo village as soon as possible once he had reached level 10, Valyr knew that Damien was thinking about his selfish request for the perspective of an entire village. After all, in an event like a monster tide, a missing person that had the ability to help out could very well dictate whether the village would live to see another day or have everything destroyed before their very eyes. With that in mind, Valyr pondered over a few things he could say to make Damien agree to his request. Though, after pondering over it for a while, Valyr thought that the best way to get him to be straight to the point and come clean What if I told you I was heading to the village for a different reason? And that reason would be? Damien asked, his expression solemn. However, after hearing Valyr's words, this solemn expression was quickly replied with that of slight surprise. Macaroni Forest, Valyr told him. Klaus Village is where I'll be resting for the night. But my actual aim is Macaroni Forest located near it. I'll be heading there to farm XP to raise my level to the peak of what a rank 0 class can reach. Surely you don't need to do that, right? Damien could not help but ask in response. After all, judging from the aura you've been exuding so far, you won't need to farm a lot of XP for you to... Just as he was about to finish his sentence, only then did Damien realize the underlying meaning behind Valyr's words. Taking in a deep breath to quell down the surprise he felt from this realization, a stern expression soon adorned his face once more as he asked Valyr, "Tell me, Valyr, what level are you at right now?" Raising his eyebrow in slight surprise, Valyr pondered over his answer for a bit, deciding to be somewhat vague with his response. "Around halfway to the peak of rank 0, why do you ask?" Hearing Valyr's response, Damien's eyes could not help but widen in shock. Looking at Valyr with great incredulity written all over his face, he calculated the level of power Valyr could exhibit if he did allow him to head to Macaroni Forest and reach level 10. If I let him go to the village, he'll reach a level of power similar to those who have been in their rank 1 classes for a while in terms of stats. On one hand, I could have him stay here and have him fight at the power of a near rank 1 class holder. However, I could also have him head out and have him return to the village, fighting with the power of someone solidly in rank 1. After mulling over it for a bit, Damien eventually came to a decision, letting out a long sigh as he chose the decision that would allow them to save more people in the long run. "All right, Valyr, you're free to head to Klaus Village. However, you better make sure you return to this village before the monster tide arrives. You hear?" "I will," said Valyr with a nod. However, since Damien wanted to make sure that Valyr did return before the monster tide came, he brought up his system in front of him before interacting with it for a bit, giving Valyr a quest that he literally could not refuse. "Ding! You have received a new quest. Return to Astardo Village." Although Valyr had already given out his verbal agreement, he wasn't surprised to see Damien issue him a quest, checking through its contents. All in all, what the quest told him was that he should return to the village in a week or less, lest he became ineligible to participate in the defense against the monster tide. After talking with Damien for a bit more regarding where he was heading, as well as the preparations the village and the village guards made for the upcoming monster tide, Valyr eventually took his leave, making his way to the dormitory sometime later. Once in his room, he picked up the bag of materials he had bought last night and slung it over his shoulder, leaving the barracks soon after to head to the village clinic. Taking a quick look at the materials that were in the bag he carried, a light smile could not help but appear on Valyr's face, making him wonder how shocked Damien and the others would be once he returned from Macaroni Forest. After all, by the time he returned, he wouldn't just rival a rank 1 class holder in terms of stats. His stats would even rival that of a peak rank 1 class holder. Not long after leaving the barracks, Valyr had arrived at the entrance of the village clinic, taking a look inside to see if Vera was busy with other tasks. Fortunately, there were none, with a somewhat sleepy Vera walking out of the back of the clinic with a cup of what looked like coffee on one hand. Letting out a yawn, Vera lightly scratched her back as an expression of slight satisfaction appeared on her face. Taking a look at her surroundings to see if there was anything amiss, her gaze eventually stopped on a certain man looking through the entrance, prompting her mind to instantly become alert. "Valyr!" Vera could not help but exclaim, eliciting a light wave from Valyr in response. "Sorry to be disturbing you this early in the morning," said Valyr as he let himself in, coming closer to where Vera was. "However, I urgently need you to concoct something for me." Hearing Valyr's words, Vera could not help but raise an eyebrow as she took a sip from her cup. Just as she was about to ask him what he wanted her to concoct, her eyes quickly noticed the same bag she had seen yesterday slung over his shoulder. However, unlike yesterday, where it seemed that the bag was only halfway full when he arrived, the bag in front of her was filled to the brim with materials. Specifically, the important materials needed for her to concoct the 2 elixirs from before. Naturally, Vera was left at a loss for words, looking at Valyr with a shocked expression on her face, only to shift her gaze to the bag over his shoulder soon after. I thought you said it would take you a week to procure another batch of materials. Indeed, I did. Valyr nodded. However, what I didn't expect was that, by the time I returned to the barracks yesterday, I was given a chance that allowed me to buy all of the remaining materials necessary for me to concoct the remaining vials I need. A chance? What chance? Asked Vera, taking yet another sip from her cup. Though, when she heard the words that came out of Valor's mouth, she tried her hardest not to spit out what she drank, barely stopping herself from doing so. I don't know if you've heard yet, but a monster tide will befall our village within this week, Valyr explained, making Vera stare at him wide-eyed. As for the chance that brought about our current situation, I volunteered to help out the village in defending against the monster tide. Because of that, the guard leader somewhat gave me a lot of money, which allowed me to buy the materials you see slung over my shoulder. By the time he was finished explaining, Vera took in a few deep breaths before letting out a long sigh to calm down her emotions. Looking at Valyr, she asked in a solemn tone, "Do we know how big the monster tide is?" "According to the others, we'll be up against a small-scale monster tide," said Valyr in response, deciding to keep the worst-case scenario of the situation to himself. After all, with how she reacted at him mentioning a monster tide, he had no doubt that her reaction would be more intense once she found out that the village might face a tide close to medium scale. "Will the village be safe?" Vera asked soon after, her hands slightly trembling from the thought of chaos enveloping their village by the time the tide arrived. "Will I be able to treat all of the injured from the tide?" Noticing that Vera's train of thought was heading towards a downward spiral, Valyr went ahead and assured her that everything was going to be fine. "The weakest among those who will be volunteering to defend against the tide are us guards, who have been training for situations like these. Aside from that, every person who has a rank 1 class and above have been recruited as well," Valyr said to her with a light smile. "In other words, if there comes a time where you'll be treating injuries, it'll only be light wounds at most." Hearing those words, Vera went silent for a bit before letting out a long sigh. As she looked at Valyr once more, the latter could not help but notice that there was a hint of concern in her gaze. "Is that the reason why you've come to the clinic so early in the morning? To have more of the elixirs concocted?" Vera asked, placing the cup she held on a nearby table. With a nod, Valyr removed the bag around his shoulder before giving it to her. "But of course, the more strength we have as a whole, the better." Receiving the bag given to her, Vera looked at the contents for a bit before deeply inhaling. In an instant, the expression that adorned her face changed to that of determination, nodding at Valyr as she told him to follow her to the back of the clinic. Once there, Vera did not hesitate to start the concoction process, the experience and feeling of concocting both types of elixirs still vivid in her mind. With great haste, she went ahead and started concocting the basic physical reinforcement elixir, making sure to not let her previous success get to her head and affect her ability to make the subsequent attempts a success. After she was finished with the basic physical reinforcement elixir, she moved on to concocting the basic mental reinforcement elixir, only taking a small break to satiate the hunger and thirst she felt after placing her full attention on the cauldron for hours straight. Eventually, just like the basic physical reinforcement elixir, she went through all 10 attempts of concocting the basic mental reinforcement elixir, a tired yet satisfied smile adorning her face once she was done. After that, she looked at Valyr, who gave her a thumbs up in response. As Vera rested for a while, recuperating the physical and mental energy she had exhausted throughout the whole ordeal, Valyr looked at the final results of the entire process, surprised that she was able to successfully complete 8 attempts out of 10. On a nearby table, 16 vials were neatly arranged into 2 rows, separated according to the color of the liquid they contained. Looking at the vials for a bit, Valyr went ahead and placed most of it into the now empty bag, leaving a vial of both liquids for Vera to take once more. "Once more, you've gone above and beyond, Miss Vera. How much should I pay you for your service?" Valyr could not help but say. In response, Vera profusely waved her hands in refusal. You don't really have to, Sir Valyr. The vials you've given me and the experience I've obtained from the entire process is enough payment for me. Plus, think of it as me indirectly helping out in the defense against the monster tide. With his mind focusing on her last statement, Valyr could not help but let out a light chuckle. Since you don't want me to pay you for your service, how about I treat you to a meal once we pass through the monster tide? Unsurprisingly, Vera's face could not help but turn slightly red at the straightforward offer. However, she did not refuse it at all, instead lightly nodding as she said, "I'll be helping everyone as much as I can from the rear lines. After all, I'm the only doctor in this village. Our lives are in your hands, doctor." Saying those words, Valyr finally bade farewell to Vera, leaving the clinic as he took a look at how much time was left before night fell. Early afternoon. Noticing that the sun had already gone past its zenith, Valyr walked closer to the village gates before taking a detour into a secluded alleyway, not hesitating to consume all of the vials in his bag in one go. Whoosh! To no surprise, the burning sensation from the basic physical reinforcement elixir and the cooling sensation from the basic mental reinforcement elixir clashed with one another, making Valyr feel a hint of pain from the whole ordeal. However, after some time, this sensation gradually became more and more pleasurable to the senses, making him feel as if he had unearthed a bit of the untapped potential in his body. Ding! As you have consumed 10 vials of both basic physical reinforcement elixir and basic mental reinforcement elixir, your body has reached the initial state of tempering, achieving basic reinforcement. You have gained the passive skill Basic Reinforced Body and Soul. Basic Reinforced Body and Soul, LV Max. Rarity, rare. The body contains tons of untapped potential waiting to be unearthed. Realizing this, multiple methods have been devised and created throughout history to do just that, with some even becoming well-renowned for years to come. However, only one method stood up to the test of time, becoming the de facto standard for all beings that seek to grasp the entirety of their body's power. Combining the pure essence of special beings into a concoction, one could use the energy from this concoction to unearth a portion of the potential hidden within one's body, allowing them to stand head and shoulders above their peers. This skill is given to those who have reached the initial stage of tempering through this concoction, also known as the basic reinforcement stage. This skill increases all stats by 5 points. I guess this is my first rare skill, then? Valyr asked himself, trying to recall how many rare skills he had in the past. Although he eventually remembered that he had dozens of it around the later versions, he knew for a fact that obtaining a rare skill this early on was incredibly difficult. For reference, if one were to evolve a common skill to a rare skill, that person would have to ascend to a rank 4 class first before meeting the minimum requirements necessary to evolve their skills to said grade. With that, it was no surprise that players coveted skills of high grades, even going into a frenzy once rumors of a high-grade skill could be obtained through simple means. I wonder how high my stats have gotten. Placing the question at the back of his head, Valyr changed his train of thought. Commanding the status screen, he requested from the system to replace the screen in front of him. While in the midst of properly disposing the now empty vials in his bag, a notification sound resounded in his mind, informing him that the system had done what he requested. With that, Valyr stopped what he was doing and took a look at his new stats, only for his eyes to widen as his mouth went agape, speechless at the massive improvement his stats had undergone. Ding! Valyr Zeihardt. Class, Civilian. Rank 0. Species, Human. Level 6. Power level, 174, C+. Unused XP, 301. HP, 210 of 210. MP, 210 of 210. Stats, 21 VIT, 21 STR, 21 AGI, 21 DX, 21 INT, 21 WIS, 21 PR, 11 LUK, 6 unassigned points. Remarks: your stats are definitely far beyond what a normal civilian can achieve. However, it's a waste that you've decided to become an all-rounder. Taking a deep breath to calm down from the excitement he was feeling, Valyr could not help but stare at his screen with widened eyes, feeling that it was difficult to take his eyes off it. Fortunately, the excitement he felt eventually died down, wanting to test this newfound strength out as he made his way out of the alleyway. Of course, with how his stats had gone through a drastic increase, Valyr tried his best to limit the amount of strength he used, knowing that it would take a while for him to acclimate. Though once he was back on a main street, he positioned his body to face the village gates, bending his knees before exerting all of the strength his body could muster through his feet. Whoosh! With his greatly increased AGI, Valyr zoomed through the remaining portion of the main street, separating him from the village gates, garnering the attention of multiple people along the way. To most of the people Valyr had passed by, all they felt was a sudden gust of wind that swiftly disappeared. However, to a select few, they could not help but gaze at the silhouette that zoomed past the village gates, all of them having the same thought in mind. Did a rank 1 class holder just pass by? While Valyr continued to zoom through the terrain at full speed, he went ahead and opened up a screen in his peripheral vision, bringing up a map before taking a quick glance at it to see if he was heading in the right direction. After making a few adjustments, he closed the screen not long after, allowing his eyes to enjoy the sight in front of him as he basked in the feeling of having achieved greater strength. Although there's still a long way to go till I return to how strong I was in my previous life, it feels nice that I'm making significant progress, Valyr muttered to himself, taking delight at how everything in his peripheral vision was a blur thanks to his AGI that had already reached rank 1 standards. Unlike the rank 0 civilian class, which increased all stats by 1 point per level, the stat distribution for a rank 1 class differed depending on the class one obtained. However, one thing about these classes were common, being that a great portion of the stats went towards the stats that were important for the class. In fact, because of this, players considered ascending to a rank 1 class the true start to one's journey in Greater Beyond, making the transition from generalists to powerful specialists. Aside from that, the level limit for a rank 1 class was much higher, needing one to increase their level by 15 levels before being told to ascend to the next rank at level 25. With both the specialized stat distribution and the increased level limit working together, it's no surprise that the capabilities of a rank 1 class holder far surpass even a player at peak rank 0. After running through the terrain for a while, he eventually arrived at the place he wanted to go to, surprisingly with a couple hours of sunlight left to spare. In contrast, his original estimation was for him to arrive at the place near sunset. Taking a look at the sight in front of him, Valyr could not help but feel that his heart gradually started to beat faster, feeling the adrenaline course through his body as every cell in it screamed out to fight against the monsters that lived in the forest before him. Indeed, rather than head straight to the nearby village to take a rest, he instead headed straight to Macaroni Forest after seeing there was still time before nightfall, wanting nothing more than to test out his current level of strength as he retrieved the wooden spear behind his back. Tightly gripping onto his spear, he started to head deeper into the forest, inwardly letting out a sigh of relief once he found out he had fully acclimated to his newfound strength. With this realization, his body gained a bit more confidence as he slowly searched through the forest, utilizing the entirety of his vision to look for a suitable first target. Fortunately, it did not take long for him to find the right one, noticing a lone wandering bear not too far away from him. Without hesitation, he dashed towards the bear at full speed, retracting his spear before thrusting it out with full strength at the right moment, catching the bear unaware as his spear gravitated towards its abdomen. Pierce! Bang! -20. As a faint thud resounded throughout the vicinity, the wooden spear Valyr held pierced through the bear's thick skin, even going so far as to dig into its muscles. Though, with the force behind the attack, that moment was only short-lived as the bear was sent flying for a couple meters, crashing into a nearby tree as it let out a pained growl. Retracting the spear he held, he could not help but look at the spear he held, then at his hands, surprised that his strength was now at the level that he could send large monsters like the bear before him flying. Recalling that he was still engaged in a battle against the bear, Valyr snapped back to reality as he dashed closer to the bear, making sure to not the latter get any chance to recover from the pain. With the amount of pain inflicted on it, the bear was greatly annoyed and incensed, wanting to find who or what decided to fight against it all of a sudden. Fortunately, just as it turned around, it caught a glimpse of a blur getting closer to it, prompting the bear to raise one of its paws and swing it downward with all of its strength. Thud! Unfortunately, the bear hit nothing but thin air as a dull thud resounded from its paw colliding with the ground. Still furious, the bear looked around once more to find its aggressor, only to realize that the blur it had seen for a brief second had appeared before it, revealing itself to be a human wielding a spear. Finally coming face to face with its aggressor, the bear let out a growl before charging forward, aiming to dish out a headbutt. In response to that, the human lightly chuckled, swiftly taking a step back before jumping into the air with all its power. Although Valyr knew he was vulnerable in the air since he could not maneuver, his opponent did not have any method to capitalize on this vulnerability. With that in mind, he brazenly extended his spear once more, exerting all of his strength as he thrust his spear towards one of the bear's eyes. Bang! -24. Growl. This time, a far louder growl than before came out of the bear's mouth, embodying the amount of pain and fury the bear was feeling at the moment. As Valyr landed on the ground, the tip of the spear he held covered in the blood and juices of the bear's eye. A grin could be seen on his face, becoming etched in the bear's mind as its remaining eye glared at him, wanting nothing more than to see him dead. Without a care for the world, the bear let out another growl as it pounced on Valyr, raising the front half of its body to utilize its greater body weight to its advantage. However, as the bear looked at Valyr, expecting the human before it to be scared and run away from its attack, a grin still adorned Valor's face as he muttered out a word. Gotcha! Pierce! Whoosh! With great haste, Valyr extended out his spear once more as he took advantage of the bear being in mid-trajectory of its attack. Imbuing all of the strength his body contained to the tip of the spear, he thrust it towards the bear's chest before placing his hands behind his back, letting the momentum the bear had built up to do the remaining work for him. Bang! Although it was by no means sharp, the wooden spear pierced through the bear's skin once more, only to be hampered by the bear's dense bones not long after. At first, the bear looked at Valyr with a feeling of smugness, thinking that the human's plan had been foiled by its sturdy body. However, once it noticed that the grin on his face had never disappeared, instead deciding to get out of the way, it was only then did the bear realize what the human wanted to happen. Knowing very well that it would die from the human's attack if it succeeded, the bear tried its best to rotate its body in midair, aiming to land on the ground on its back at the very second. Unfortunately for the bear, just as it was about to rotate, a being appeared on top of it, kicking down on its abdomen to make sure it stayed on course. Oh no, you don't. Bang! Crack! Poochie! Appearing above the bear's falling body, Valyr kicked on its back, hastening its descent as the law of gravity finally did its work. With the wooden spear being the first to touch with the ground, it dug into it for a bit before getting stuck. Not long after, the spear finally broke through the bear's dense bones as more of the bear's weight pushed down on the spear, eventually piercing through its heart as it poked out its back, its bloody tip and shaft now available for all to see. -61. I'm surprised the spear didn't snap from the weight. As blood gradually trickled out of the monster before him, Valyr retrieved the spear jutting out of the bear's back and shook off the excess blood. After that, he struck against the bear a few more times, only stopping once a notification sound resounded in his mind. Looking at the injury that had solidified the bear's death for a bit, he went ahead and closed his eyes, committing the fight scene into memory. After a few seconds, he opened his eyes once more, lightly nodding in respect towards the corpse before walking away from it, opening his screen soon after to check the notification he had received. With my current stats, I can show more of the combat experience I've accumulated in my past life, Valyr muttered to himself, satisfied with the outcome of the battle. However, I shouldn't let this get to my head. After all, The reason why I could do what I did was because of the great disparity between our stats. After all, it's just level 11. The fact that the bear was level 11 was the reason why Valyr chose it as his first target, being at the precipice of one stat starting to become more specialized. Aside from that, he also chose a monster at level 11 because he knew that the strongest monsters in this forest would have stats that exceeded his in some areas, reducing the advantage of his high yet all-round stats to nil. As for choosing a monster that was level 10 and below, he thought that it would be meaningless, certain that it wouldn't take long for him to obtain their experience. This is definitely a lot more experience than I was expecting. Almost forgot the game had a system like this in place, said Valyr as he looked at the notification he had received. In any case, I should find a way to maximize this advantage. After all, Damien wants me to return to the village as soon as possible. Then again, I'm here because of Tristan's quest in the first place. Ding! With a 5-level disparity between the user and the opponent, the amount of experience obtained shall be increased by 100%. You have slain a level 11 forest bear. You have gained 348 XP. Finding out that the experience he had obtained from killing the bear was equal to just a bit more than 1/10 of the experience he needed to level up, a wide smile could not help but appear on Valor's face as he checked how much time he had left before sunset. Seeing that there was still a lot more time before then, he left the vicinity, deciding to head in deeper to the forest in search of monsters that were of a higher level than the bear. Since it's not much of a problem for me to kill a level 11 monster, I should try searching for one that's around level 12 or 13, Valyr muttered to himself, wondering how far his current stats could take him to maximize the amount of experience he could get from the level disparity. Unexpectedly, just as he had started to move deeper into the forest, a small pack of wolves had appeared before him, all of them baring their teeth at him as they growled in unison. Noticing that the wolves had encircled him, leaving no way for him to escape, Valyr went ahead and checked the level of one of the wolves in preparation for the battle, only for a chuckle to escape his mouth soon after. Ding! Level 12, Forest Wolf. Well then, what perfect timing! As the wolves surrounding him continued to growl, waiting for Valyr to make a move, Valyr went ahead and scanned the other wolves with the system, wanting to see what levels they were. 3 at level 12, and 2 at level 13, Valyr murmured, tightening the grip on his spear as he wondered what had attracted these wolves to him. Fortunately, thanks to a bit of pondering, his query was swiftly answered as he took a look at his bloodied spear. They must have come running to where I am because of the pungent blood still stuck on my spear, thinking they'd gain the opportunity to feast on a fresh corpse. Unfortunately, the only corpses available for feasting will be theirs. With a quick bend of the knees, Valyr darted towards one of the wolves, prompting 2 of the wolves behind his back to lunge forward and attempt to bite him. However, as if he was prepared for such a scenario, he came to an abrupt halt at the very last second, just as the wolf in front of him lunged to bite him as well. Ducking before shifting his body to the side, he allowed the 3 wolves to collide with one another as he caught the wolf by his side unaware, unhesitatingly kicking it on the jaw with all its strength. Bang! -15. Howl! Wailing out in pain, the wolf Valyr unceremoniously kicked squarely hit a nearby tree as it fell to the ground. In the meantime, the 3 wolves that previously aimed to attack Valyr bit down on each other's jaws, quickly letting go of each other's maws as they realized that their intended target had disappeared. Fortunately for them, a howl from the remaining wolf that hadn't attacked told them where to look, with the 3 turning their heads to find their target attacking one of their kin. Angered by this fact, the 3 wolves lunged forward once more, minding each other's presence as they opened their maws to take advantage of their target's vulnerability. Yet, once again, as if he had eyes behind his back, Valyr took a few steps forward before turning around, utilizing the momentum from the rotation to sweep out with his spear. Thud! 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 -21, -20, -22. In succession, the 3 wolves were sent flying backwards, leaving only the remaining wolf that hadn't been attacked within his vicinity. With that, Valyr charged forward before thrusting out his spear, aiming it directly at the wolf's throat. Pierce! Pucci! -76. With the direction of the strike being upward, the wolf Valyr targeted was sent flying in the air as it tried to let out a howl. However, with its throat pierced, it failed to do so, a hiss being the only sound it could make before it eventually fell to the ground with a thud. Ow! Just as Valyr was about to strike out once more with his spear to deal the final blow, the wolf he had kicked earlier had finally arrived where he was, lunging forward before swiping with its paws. Though just like how it was sent flying earlier, Valyr kicked the wolf squarely on the side of its abdomen after stepping aside, narrowly avoiding the attack, just as the wolf collided with another tree soon after. Bang! -22. Seeing as 4 of the 5 wolves were down and out of the count for now, he went ahead and continued what he was going to do, attacking the wolf with a couple sweeps with his spear before landing the final blow with Pierce. Bang! -76. Ding! Seeing that one of their kin had died under their target's hands, the remaining 4 wolves instead became enraged at the target rather than finding something amiss and running away. Utilizing all of the strength in their bodies, the wolves lunged forward once more, attacking with their paws this time after realizing biting their target down wouldn't work. In response to the move, Valyr stood still, allowing 3 of the wolves to successfully land their attacks on him as he focused most of his attention on the wolf he faced. Pierce! Bang! -125. Ding! Catching the remaining wolf unaware, Valyr struck down with his spear, aiming for its skull. To no surprise, the spear was able to pierce through its skull as Valyr channeled all of his strength, leaving him with 3 wolves as he retrieved his spear from the open skull of the wolf. PSH, 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 -3, -5, -2. As the attacks of the 3 wolves landed on his body, Valyr was slightly surprised that their damage was only in the single digits, only to recall that his VIT was over 20 points. I guess their stats lean more towards DX and AGI, considering how they fought against me so far. Anyways, it's time to end this. My hands are going numb. With this in mind, he went ahead and struck down once more, piercing through one of the wolves' skulls with Pierce, leaving no room for the other 2 to react as he sent both of them flying with a sweep. Bang! -125. Ding! While in midair, Valyr dashed towards one of the wolves before forcefully pulling it down to the ground. Then, with another Pierce, his spear pierced through the wolf's abdomen, rupturing its heart. With a quick slash using the spear tip, the wolf was quickly sent to the afterlife, its injuries now far too grievous for it to handle. -76. -31. Ding! Only 1 left, Valyr said to himself, taking in a deep breath before running once more to the only wolf that remained. With a growl, the wolf got into a battle-ready stance before dashing in Valyr's direction. At that moment, the only thought in its mind was to avenge its fallen kin somehow. Unfortunately, Valyr would never give it that chance. Pierce! Bang! Coming yet to another abrupt halt, Valyr raised a spear before striking it down at the very last moment, breaking through the wolf's skull before piercing all the way through to the other side as all of the remaining vigor of the wolf gradually disappeared without a trace, eventually turning limp as a notification sound resounded in his mind. -125. Ding! Now that all of his foes were down for the count, Valyr let out a sigh of relief before leaning on the side of a tree. Although it feels exhilarating to be able to move like this again, I forgot to consider how tiring it was at the end. Well, at least the XP I got from the battle makes up for it. With a 6-level disparity between the user and the opponent, the amount of experience obtained shall be increased by 120%. You have slain a level 12 forest wolf. You have gained 532 XP. With a 7-level disparity between the user and the opponent, the amount of experience obtained shall be increased by 140%. You have slain a level 13 forest wolf. You have gained 785 XP. In just 2 battles, I've already amassed enough XP to increase my level to level 7. After calculating all of the XP he had obtained from the 2 previous battles, Valyr could not help but let out a chuckle. Making sure I consumed all 10 elixirs of each before coming here was definitely worth it. Taking a look at the sun to see how much time has passed, Valyr went ahead and shook off the blood from his spear as a light smile adorned his face. There's still over an hour or so before sunset. I should make the most of it and kill a few monsters. With that in mind, Valyr placed his wooden spear above his shoulder as he started to wander around the forest once more. Should I allocate the XP I just got a leveling up? Nah, I'll do that once I amass more XP. For now, I should take advantage of my low level and maximize my XP gain. By the time the sun was about to set, a man with a bloodied spear behind his back got out of Macaroni Forest with a slightly exhausted expression, carrying 2 wolf corpses on top of each shoulder. Taking a look at the amount of time he had before the sun fully set, the man swiftly hastened his pace, pushing his body to what it could handle while carrying 2 corpses at once. Although all I want to do right now is to lie in bed and get some rest, it goes without saying that I've amassed a lot of XP during these past couple of hours, Valyr said to himself, letting out laughter as he ran across the wilderness with 2 corpses in tow. After going through those 2 battles, which allowed him to roughly gauge his current strength, Valyr decided to take things down a notch and settled for lower-level monsters for the remaining time he was in the forest, lone level 11 monsters being his weakest target. In the end, he had killed 5 monsters at level 11, as well as 5 monsters at level 12, increasing the amount of XP he had to a bit over 10,000. Then again, I probably wouldn't have finished that second battle with the wolves so quickly if I didn't utilize vital and brutal hits, Valyr murmured, recalling the adrenaline-pumping fight he had with the wolves. Then, letting out a light sigh, he said, in any case, I should increase my critical rate and also probably upgrade my weapon, now that I think about it. In any game that involved dealing damage, one would quickly become familiar with critical hits, or hits that dealt increased damage. In Greater Beyond, there were 4 types of critical hits, each dealing far more perverse damage than the previous. The first type was the normal critical hit. Unlike other games, which indicated a 50% increase in damage when a hit like that landed, Greater Beyond's critical hit warranted a 100% increase in damage, the chances of which are reliant on a being's critical rate. Unsurprisingly, with the increase in stats and skills that increased critical rate, critical hits were a given in the later versions of Greater Beyond, with it becoming a hallmark for true experts. As for the next 3, these are not reliant on stats and skills. Instead, they were reliant on the opponent they were up with, the technique of the one attacking, and, in the case of the final type, a bit of luck. The type that came after critical hit was a vital hit, allowing one to deal thrice the damage their attacks originally would. For one to deal a vital hit, one would have to attack a part of the enemy that was of vital importance to their lives, hence the name. Vital hits were generally denoted with 2 exclamation points instead of the 1 critical hits had, with the damage text becoming a shade of blood red. After the vital hit was the brutal hit, a hit that allowed one to deal 5 times as much damage as their attacks would originally cause. Similar to the vital hit, a brutal hit relied upon attacking a part of the enemy that was vital to their lives. However, unlike a vital hit, a brutal hit would only occur if the attacker aimed for the most important vital part of the enemy. For enemies made out of flesh and blood, this would be the brain. For other beings, it largely depended on their structure. Nevertheless, these hits were denoted with 3 exclamation points, with the damage text taking a shade of dark red. Last but not least was the fatal hit, a hit that could only be triggered once a brutal hit also triggered a critical hit. At first, this requirement was misunderstood by many, thinking that they would be able to trigger fatal hits every time with a 100% critical rate. However, once they reached a level where they could guarantee critical hits with every attack they did, it was then did they realize how mistaken they were. For a brutal hit to trigger a critical hit, the chances of doing so were 1,000th of the being's current critical hit. So, even though a player could easily achieve guaranteed critical hits in the later versions, they were still at the mercy of RNG if they wanted to get a fatal hit. Though if one did successfully land a fatal hit, they would have felt like they had hit the jackpot. After all, the damage of a fatal hit was twice as much as what a brutal hit could deal, allowing one to deal 10 times the damage they originally would. On top of that, it would be denoted by 4 exclamation points, with the color of the damaged text being as dark as the abyss. "We're finally here," murmured Valyr as he gazed at the village gate that stood before him, inwardly letting out a sigh of relief as there was still a few minutes before sunset. Taking in a deep breath, Valyr walked through the gates, only to be stopped by one of the village guards. "Halt! State your business," the village guard told him. Raising the two corpses above his shoulders for a bit, Valyr replied, "I'm here to sell the corpses I brought with me. Also, I'm planning to rest in this village for the night." Hearing Valyr's words, the guard went silent for a bit, only to letting out a light sigh soon after. Nodding, the guard then said to him, "You may proceed, sir. However, please don't wander around the village in the night." "I'll keep that in mind." With a nod, Valyr thanked the man as he walked deeper into the village, quickly noticing that the atmosphere surrounding it was somewhat tense. Although he was curious as to why, he decided to place the matter at the back of his head for now, prioritizing to drop off the corpses he carried and sell them for a bit of money. Fortunately, it did not take long for him to find the village inn, staring at the 3-story building in front of him before heading in. "And here I thought this village wouldn't be receiving any guests for quite some time. Welcome, welcome." Just as he had entered the inn, a boisterous voice resounded from the far back of the inn, revealing the origin of the voice to come from a slightly plump man in his 30s. "I presume you're here to sell the carcasses you've brought with you?" "Indeed," Valyr nodded. Placing the corpses he brought on the ground with a thud, he gazed at the man before him. "I was also wondering if I could stay here for the night." "Oh, certainly. That is why the inn was built in the first place." The man grinned, only for it to be replaced by a solemn expression soon after. "However, by the time the first rays of the sun appear, you should return to where you came from, kind sir." "And why is that?" Valyr asked, watching as a few people carried the carcasses he brought to the back of the inn. "Haven't you heard? A monster tide is about to befall this village at any moment now," the man said, which finally answered the question Valyr had earlier regarding the tense atmosphere in the village. "I see. I'll keep that in mind," Valyr said with a nod, thanking the man before him as the latter gave him 10 silver coins as payment for the carcasses. "Since I'll be staying here for the night, is it possible to know your name?" "Call me Adrian, kind sir," Adrian said with a light chuckle. "Well, since you're the only customer of this inn for tonight, and because you've given us a great amount of meat to use, the inn shall whip up a dinner that shall satisfy your taste buds. Consider it the least." Nodding in response to Adrian's words, Valyr went ahead and seated himself on a table, waiting for the free dinner to arrive. While doing so, Adrian went up to him and struck up a conversation to pass the time, talking about various things regarding their lives. During that conversation, Valyr revealed that he was actually a village guard for another village, making Adrian look at him a bit differently, his gaze now containing a hint of respect and admiration. Sometime later into their conversation, he thanked Valyr for his selfless sacrifice of being a protector for a village. After that, the two continued to talk for some more, only for their topic to eventually become the upcoming monster tide. "How prepared do you think Klaus village is for the upcoming monster tide?" Valyr asked, which only made Adrian bitterly smile in response. "Although we have full faith in our guards that they would be able to protect our village and keep it standing for years to come, we still can't help but think of the worst-case scenario," Adrian replied as he let out a wry chuckle. "According to what I've obtained, a small-scale monster tide will hit our village within the next few days at the earliest, which might not seem like too big of a problem for a village like ours to handle. However, the bare minimum for a village to more or less survive a small-scale monster tide is to have 10 people at the peak of rank 1, he continued, only for tears to well up around his eyes soon after. "We only have 3 of those, for fuck's sake. On top of that, one of them decided to leave the village just as the threat of the tide was getting closer." Realizing that he had gotten heated with his words, Adrian cleared his throat before letting out a long sigh, a sigh filled with dejection, anger, but most of all, acceptance to what fate might befall them. With a wry smile on his face, he looked at Valyr and apologized. "Apologies for getting a bit heated there. I guess I just wanted someone to remember my existence. After all, there's no saying if the village will remain standing once the monster tide passes." Just as Valyr was about to say something to Adrian, His dinner had finally arrived. With his words stuck in his throat, he looked as the plates before him were filled with delectable and hearty dishes that could fill even the hungriest of men up. "Eat up, sir. You'll need to have a lot of energy before your departure tomorrow." After saying those words, Adrian turned around and left Valyr on his own, thinking that the latter wanted peace and quiet while eating. However, before Adrian could even take a single step, Valyr stopped him, grabbing him by the arm. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" Adrian raised his eyebrow as he turned his head around. "I'm quite satisfied with what I've gotten." Valyr shook his head, though soon after, he looked at Adrian with a gaze of determination. "However, I just wanted to say that even though it looks like all hope is lost, don't ever succumb to those thoughts. Sometimes the world will respond in ways that would surprise you." Hearing that, a genuine smile appeared on Adrian's face as he nodded in response. "I appreciate the words, sir. I kind of needed to hear that. Anyways, let me not disturb you from your meal any further," he added before taking his leave, finally allowing Valyr to eat his dinner in silence. As he watched Adrian's silhouette gradually move farther away from him, Valyr could not help but think about the words he told him as he dug into his dinner. Although it might seem that the words he said sounded like words of consolation from a stranger that wouldn't even be affected by such an event, Valyr knew that those words of his held a bit of truth. After all, the world had given him a second shot at life, even though he expected none. If not because of that, he wouldn't have told Adrian those words that came from the bottom of his heart. After finishing the hearty dinner that was given to him, Valyr went to find Adrian, asking him where he could stay for the night. In response, Adrian told Valyr the room that was assigned to him before giving him a key. With that, Valyr thanked Adrian and asked him how much the accommodation was for the night. However, Adrian's response to his question made Valyr's eyes slightly widen, making him wonder whether the man in front of him was all right. "You don't have to pay for the accommodations, sir," Adrian told with a smile. "The carcasses you've given us are more than enough payment for your food and your accommodations." Although Adrian told him that, those words didn't sit well with Valyr. Because of that, he rummaged out the 10 silver coins that Adrian gave him as payment and gave it back to him. As a look of surprise adorned Adrian's face, Valyr told him, "Don't consider this as payment for the accommodation. Consider this a gift from a stranger." Hearing that, a peal of light laughter escaped Adrian's mouth before nodding in response, thanking Valyr as he allowed the latter to head to his designated room. Once he was there, Valyr was quite surprised that the room contained more or less the same amenities his room back in the barracks had. However, compared to the somewhat cramped space of the dormitory, the room he had rented was more spacious, making him wonder if it was possible to get a space of his own back in Astardo village. Nevertheless, he placed the thought at the back of his head for now, recalling that he had arrived at this village for the sake of increasing his level to peak of rank 0. With that, he took off his clothes and entered the bathroom to take a shower, allowing the water to flow through his body as thoughts of his earlier conversation with Adrian resurfaced in his mind. Even though Valyr could not help but feel like he had to help Klaus village after hearing Adrian's words, he knew for a fact that his existence there would only be delaying the inevitable. After all, unlike bona fide rank 1 class holders, he didn't have the skills that came along with the ascension to rank 1, skills that could unleash great amounts of destruction. The only thing he had going for him were his stats, though it still paled in comparison to peak rank 1 class holders with specialized stats. Feeling the lacerations he received from the wolves earlier as he scrubbed his body, Valyr could not help but let out a long sigh as he got out of the shower, changing into a set of clothes he had brought along with him as he lied down on his bed. Gazing at the wooden ceiling above him, he could not help but mutter to himself, "I need to get stronger, not only for the sake of Adrian or for the sake of Astardo village, but also for the sake of myself, my goals, and my people. I need to get strong." With the rays of the morning sun piercing through the large window in his room, Valyr could not help but slightly crack his eyes open as he lightly frowned, turning around to avoid direct sunlight. Although he was successful in getting a bit more shut-eye, the moment of bliss only lasted for another half hour as the room gradually grew brighter, eventually forcing Valyr to get out of bed as he let out a slightly annoyed yawn. Scratching his back before doing a series of light stretches, Valyr could not help but think about how he slept last night, which he found to be less pleasant than usual. Even though the bed he lay down upon was somewhat better compared to the bed he slept at in the barracks, he knew that the reason why he couldn't sleep that well was due to the thoughts swirling in his mind as he tried to fall asleep, some regarding the upcoming monster tide, and some regarding the need for him to level up. After going through his usual morning routine, Valyr eventually left the room he had stayed in, heading towards the lobby to find Adrian already awake. "Good morning, sir," Adrian said with a light smile. "Have you gotten good sleep last night?" In response to that, Valyr wryly smiled. "Is it possible to get some breakfast before I leave?" "Most certainly, sir." Adrian nodded before gesturing Valyr to head towards the dining area. "Consider it a complimentary service of your stay." Shrugging his shoulders in response, Valyr made his way to the dining area, seating himself in front of a random empty table as he waited for breakfast to arrive. Fortunately, it only took a few minutes for breakfast to arrive, consisting of a few pieces of toasted bread and a small assortment of cured meats, as well as a mug of what looked like coffee on the side. Taking a small sip of the coffee, Valyr went ahead and ate the simple breakfast that was given to him, enjoying the entire meal as he stood up from his table around 10 minutes later. Returning to the lobby, he then bade farewell to Adrian as he thanked him for the hospitality he had shown to him. Waving goodbye, Valyr left the inn, swiftly making his way to the Klaus village's gates as he headed towards Macaroni Forest. As the distance between the village and the forest wasn't that far, it only took around half an hour for Valyr to arrive at the periphery of the forest, considering that he wasn't going at full speed. Basking himself in the slightly harsh rays of the sun for a bit, he then sat down on a nearby rock as he pondered over what he was going to do for today. Since I've decided to have most of the day today allocated towards hunting monsters for XP, it could be said that it's certain that I'll have enough XP to raise my level to level 10, Valyr muttered to himself, wondering as to how much XP he truly needed to reach level 10. Unfortunately for him, he could only view the amount of XP he needed to reach the next level, and not any of the levels after that. With how the levels at the hundreds need hundreds of millions of experience per level, it's no surprise that I've forgotten how much XP I need to level up at the beginning. In any case, before I leave, I should probably try finding monsters at level 14 and 15, he said soon after, thinking about his chances against monsters at this level. I'll have to try fighting against a lone level 13 monster first. But then again, considering the only injury I got from that fight was a few lacerations on my skin, as long as I find a lone monster at level 14 or 15, I should probably be fine. With that in mind, Valyr unfurled the fabric affixing the wooden spear on his back, standing up as he firmly gripped on his spear. Taking a deep breath, he then headed into the forest, looking for a lone monster at level 13. Fortunately, after about 10 minutes of wandering about, the world had answered his prayers, allowing him to come face to face with a bear at level 13. Just as he had expected, with the fight being a one-on-one, there wasn't much problem with Valyr fighting against monsters at level 13. With renewed confidence in fighting against level 14 and 15 monsters, he left the bear he had killed and moved deeper to the forest, looking around for monsters that fit his current criterion. Of course, while looking for a monster at level 14 and above, he did not pass up on wandering level 13 monsters, killing 4 more monsters at that level before finally finding what seemed to be the ideal target he had in mind. Hiding behind a tree, he eyed a bear that was quite a distance away from him, which seemed to be idly gazing at the river before it. With spiky black fur and a silver stripe running along its back, the bear before him exuded a level of power he wasn't expecting. That's weird. Shouldn't the feeling I'm getting from a monster like this only be marginally stronger than a level 13 monster? Curious, Valyr went ahead and identified the bear through the system. However, once he read through the system's words, all color was drained off his face as he silently moved away from the premises. There's no way in hell am I going to face off against an elite. Ding. Level 14 silver-striped bear, elite. Just like how variant classes existed, which dictated the level of strength of being wielded at a certain class, variants also existed among the monsters one could come across, the weakest and the most common variant among them being the elite monster. Unlike a normal monster, an elite monster had stats that were 25% higher than a normal monster at the same level. Even though Valyr had almost all of his stats in the low 20s, he knew for a fact that he wouldn't be a match for an elite monster, considering that their important stats were most likely at least twice as high as his. Hastily running away from the elite monster he had passed by, Valyr went ahead and searched for monsters at that level that weren't elite. However, no matter how much he tried, all of the monsters at that level and above were considered elite, with one of them even being a variant far more dangerous than a normal elite. Ding! Level 15, Wind Claw Wolf, Uncommon Elite. Although it was only the addition of a prefix, an uncommon elite monster was far more terrifying than a normal elite, with inexperienced players even 5 levels above it becoming its prey. After all, compared to an elite, an uncommon elite had stats 50% greater than a normal monster of the same level, which was enough for players and NPCs alike to be wary of their existence. Much less to say for rare elites and above. Eventually realizing that every monster he came across that was level 14 or 15 was an elite monster, Valyr could not help but let out a sigh and settle for level 13 monsters. Including the first 5 he killed before coming across his first elite, he had killed a total of 50 level 13 monsters by the time the sun was about to set, netting him about 39,000 XP. Taking a seat on a decently sized boulder, Valyr went ahead and looked at the amount of experience he currently had, being left at a slight loss for words as he noticed that he had amassed close to 50,000 XP within these past 2 days. Surely, this is more than enough to raise my level up to the limit, right? Hoping for the best, he then went ahead and allocated all of his XP towards leveling up. Fortunately, by the time he had reached level 9, he still had enough XP left over for the final prompt, allowing a light smile to appear on his face. Ding! 12,260 XP has been allocated. You are now level 10. All of your stats have been increased by 1 point. You have gained 1 unassigned stat point. You have reached the level limit of your current class. To increase this limit, it is highly advised for you to ascend to a higher class. Would you like to ascend? No, I haven't even gotten all of the skills for the variant class I'm aiming for yet. Unsurprisingly, after reading the notification of having to advance to level up further, Valyr declined the prompt, saving the ascension for the time he had gathered all of the skills he wanted. In the meantime, I should really return to the village as soon as possible. Ding! You have completed the quest requirements for an experienced blacksmith suggestion. 1. Head to Tristan to receive your rewards. Receiving a notification that his quest with Tristan had finally been completed, Valyr stood up and took in a deep breath, slightly lamenting the fact that he wouldn't be able to carry some of the corpses he killed if he wanted to return as swiftly as possible. However, he placed the matter at the back of his head, dashing forward in the direction of Astardo village not long after. Whoosh! With the slight increase to his AGI, thanks to reaching the level limit, the speed at which Valyr ran through the plains was significantly faster than before. At some point, he was curious as to what his current stats now looked like, only to recall that he still had 10 unassigned stat points he could allocate. Since the variant class needs me to both have a high DX and INT, then it's no surprise as to how I'm allocating, Valyr muttered as he allocated 5 points each to both stats. Soon, he opened up his status screen in his peripheral vision, whistling in admiration as he subconsciously hastened his pace from excitement. Now, that's a status screen. Ding! Valyr Zeihardt. Class: Civilian, Rank 0. Species: Human. Level: 10, ascend to increase level limit. Power level: 225, C++. Unused XP: 20,171. HP: 250 of 250. MP: 300 of 300. Stats: 25 VIT, 25 STR, 25 AGI, 30 DX, 30 INT, 25 WIS, 25 PER, 15 LUK, 0 unassigned points. Remarks: You're definitely an anomaly. Slightly surprised that he still had over 20,000 XP left over from leveling up, Valyr could not help but let out a peal of light laughter. What a perfect coincidence. After I hand in the quest to Tristan and receive the analysis skill, I'll use the XP. I have to level it up, finally allowing me to gauge my enemies beforehand. Of course, it'll also finally allow me to check the details of other things, which is definitely handy since it's a given that I'm going to handle a ton of items as a blacksmith, he continued, allowing his mind to wander for a bit as he daydreamed about being able to handle precious materials in the future. Then again, although it's become normal in the later versions, having a power level of C+ while still being rank 0 is definitely a weird feeling. In Greater Beyond, the general method for NPCs to figure out other people's strengths aside from using analysis is by obtaining their power level from a reputable organization. With that in mind, the lowest grade one could obtain was C, which was given to people who hadn't begun leveling up or those that were on their way to leveling up. After that was C+, a power level normally given to those that had just broken through to rank 1 or were in the process of progressing through their rank 1 class. After that was C++, which was normally given to those who had broken through to their rank 2 class, with a power level of B being given to those that were more or less halfway to reaching the peak of rank 2. After that was A, S, SS, SSS, and X, each having their own separate stages similar to the previously mentioned grades. Although more grades existed after X++, where beings were already considered existences that could traverse the darkness of space on their own, those were all still far away from the current Valyr. Well, I wouldn't have probably reached level 10 this quick if not for the level disparity system. Then again, there was also the fact that monsters from level 11 onwards have a different system for XP gain. He continued, his body trembling with excitement from recalling how he had amassed close to 40,000 XP in just one day. As the first 10 levels were considered the tutorial phase in Greater Beyond, the amount of XP gained from killing monsters at these levels reflected this nature, with each increase in level garnering an arbitrary increase to the amount of XP one would get. However, once one went past this point and entered the true world of Greater Beyond, the amount of XP they would gain was significantly higher. After all, unlike the arbitrary increase one would notice from level 1 to 10 monsters, the XP one would obtain from killing a certain monster was equivalent to a portion of the XP needed for a being to level up to the monster's level, specifically 1/100th of the XP necessary to level up. With that and the level disparity system working together, it was no surprise that Valyr was able to amass a great amount of XP in such a small amount of time, though he was certain that his needs for XP would only get worse with time. By the time Valyr had returned to Astardo village, the moon was already halfway to reaching its peak. Gasping for air and exhaustion, he then took in a few deep breaths before passing through the village gates as he made his way back to the barracks. Unexpectedly, while on his way there, he came across one of the guards that were on night patrol, the latter being slightly surprised to see a person still walking along the streets at this time. However, once the guard figured out who the person passing by was, a light smile could not help but adorn his face as he came closer. "Valyr! Oh, if it isn't Jonas," said Valyr with a chuckle before giving Jonas a quick embrace. "How have you been?" "I'm doing fine," Jonas replied with a light smile. "Leon and Louis didn't join me for night patrol today, so it's just me and a few other guards doing the patrolling. In any case, I shouldn't be the one asking that question," he continued. "How have you been? To be honest, we were surprised Damien allowed you to leave the village to head somewhere, even though the monster tide is coming up in a week." "I've been doing fine as well," Valyr said with a nod. As for the reason why he allowed me to leave, whoosh, all of a sudden, an overbearing pressure emanated from Valyr, prompting Jonas to take a few steps back as he looked at the man before him with widened eyes. "What the hell? You've only been away for a couple days, but you've gotten this strong?" Jonas could not help but exclaim. "What the hell have you been doing outside the village for the past couple days, Valyr?" "Let's just say I've been staking my life out there, battling foes I shouldn't be battling at my current level." Leaving those words for Jonas to think about, Valyr went ahead and continued walking towards the barracks, making his way to Damien's office. Seeing that the light behind the door was still open, Valyr inwardly let out a sigh of relief. "Thankfully, I don't have to wait till morning, unlike with Tristan's quest. I'm pretty sure that guy's already deep asleep." With that in mind, Valyr went ahead and brought up the notification he had received just as he had entered the village. Ding! You have completed the quest. Return to Astardo village. Head to Damien to receive your rewards. I guess the other reason why Damien gave me this quest is to find out the results of my journey. Thinking about this, a slightly mischievous grin appeared on his face as he knocked on the door before him. Well, he's going to be in for a big surprise. Come in. Just like any other time he entered Damien's office, Valyr was greeted by the sight of the man before him, sifting through various documents on his desk, all with a pensive expression on his face. Closing the door before him, Valyr waited for Damien to finish what he was doing, deciding to take a seat on a nearby chair. Fortunately, he did not have to wait that long, with Damien neatly arranging the documents he was going through on the side a couple minutes later. With that, he looked at Valyr, who, at first glance, instantly made Damien's pupils shrink in surprise as he did not expect Valyr to return to the village this early. There was still some time before the monster tide, after all. Did you finish what you needed to do? Damien asked. Nodding, Valyr replied, Yeah, I'm finally level 10. Just as Damien was about to ask a question that seemed to be a natural follow-up to his words, Valyr interrupted him, telling him, If I'm thinking what you're thinking, then no, I haven't ascended yet. You haven't. At this moment, Damien's mouth could not help but go agape, certain that Valyr had undergone through his ascension to rank 1. After all, that alone would explain the feeling he felt from Valyr at the moment. To him, Valyr seemed to emanate the feeling that he was only slightly inferior in power, if not his equal. You're telling me he hasn't ascended yet, but he already exudes a level of power comparable to those at the peak of rank 1? With this thought circling around his mind, Damien could not help but scratch his head, wondering how such a man like Valyr ended up in this village with his talent. For him to have the power of a rank 1 while still at rank 0, there's no saying what kind of achievements he might accomplish in the future. I guess it's the Astardo village's good luck that he decided to stay here. With that in mind, a genuine smile appeared on Damien's face as he let out a light chuckle, surprising Valyr as he hadn't seen the man before him laugh before. Nevertheless, Valyr knew that Damien wouldn't laugh like that for a reason. Is it because he's relieved that there's finally another person in the village with power on par with a rank 1? Valyr thought to himself. After all, the more people with power on par with a rank 1 class holder, the better our chances at winning the monster tide. If Damien were to hear Valyr's thoughts right now, then he would have nodded in agreement, saying that he would be correct. However, that was only one reason as to why he chuckled. Instead, the main reason why he let out a chuckle was the relief he felt after realizing Valyr's monstrous potential. Thinking that if Valyr were continued growing at this pace, then the safety of their village would be more or less guaranteed. Clearing his throat to catch Valyr's attention, Damien looked at Valyr directly in the eye before saying, Although I'm curious as to why you haven't ascended yet, that's something I shouldn't be privy to. After all, every person has their own for choosing what they did. However, I should reward you for your loyalty to the village, considering that I haven't attached any reward to the quest I gave you. After saying those words, a screen appeared in front of Damien's field of vision, prompting him to interact with it for a bit as a notification sound resounded in Valyr's mind soon after. Ding! The quest Return to Astardo Village has been modified by the quest giver. You have received 1,000 XP. You have received 200 contribution points. You have received 200 merit points. Looking through the notifications he had received, Valyr's eyes could not help but widen slightly as he looked at Damien, who looked at him with a light smile on his face. Consider it thanks for me that you've upheld your promise. Anyways, I won't have you stay here any further. You're free to leave, he said soon after. Just remember to not leave the village for the next week. I'll keep that in mind. Valyr nodded, turning around before leaving the office. Thank you, Damien. With that, Valyr left the premises as Damien looked at fleeting silhouette for a bit with a smile. While Damien returned to his work, Valyr made a quick detour to the cafeteria to grab a slightly heavy meal, considering that he hadn't eaten lunch nor dinner yet. After he felt that his hunger was satiated, he then went to his dormitory and took a quick shower, changing into a fresh set of loose clothes sometime later. Lying down on his bed, Valyr allowed the exhaustion he had been enduring so far to envelop his body as he eventually fell into a deep sleep. Once morning had arrived, Valyr gradually opened his eyes, feeling that his body had more energy in it than ever before. Although he wondered why he felt more awake than any previous morning, Valyr eventually thought that it had something to do with the drastic increase in his stats as he took a quick shower. After getting out of the shower, he changed into a set of clean clothes before affixing the bloodied spear he had dropped on the floor last night to his back, feeling that his connection with it seemed to be growing, though it felt somewhat intangible. Nevertheless, he placed those thoughts at the back of his head as he recalled the main reason why he woke up early. With that in mind, he left the barracks at a slightly brisk pace, deciding to forego breakfast for now as the completion of Tristan's quest was more important to his eyes. Eventually, just as the sun had fully peeked out of the horizon, Valyr had arrived at the village smithy, the doors of which were just opened by the man that lived in the smithy. Still somewhat groggy, Tristan looked at the man that had appeared in front of the smithy before it was officially open, only to realize that he recognized the man somehow. After a few seconds, his consciousness eventually became fully alert as his eyes widened in surprise. Valyr, it's been quite some time since we've last met, but I've accomplished your quest, said Valyr with a grin, letting Tristan feel a hint of the power he currently held. Naturally, with the power he felt from Valyr, Tristan quickly noticed that Valyr's current power exceeded what was possible for a rank 0 to wield. With that, it was no surprise that he asked him, "Did you ascend to rank 1? Not yet." Valyr shook his head. Nevertheless, Tristan was still somewhat skeptical. Analysis, Tristan muttered a few seconds later, his eyes gaining a light blue tint to it as mana swirled around his eyes. A few seconds later, this light blue tint disappeared as his mouth went slightly slack-jawed. "To think you're actually still level 10. I did say the truth." Valyr shrugged his shoulders. "It was you who didn't believe me. My doubts have reasons to them, all right?" Tristan slightly frowned. After all, who would believe a rank 0 class holder to have a level of power equivalent to someone at rank 1? What kind of experience did you even go through? Just as Tristan thought Valyr would answer his question, Valyr instead beat around the bush, making Tristan feel somewhat disappointed. An experience that allowed me to reach my current level of power, of course. Anyways, give me the rewards for the quest. You could have waited until the smithy was fully set up, no? Tristan let out a light sigh. And risk reducing the rewards I'd get from finishing early? Not a chance, said Valyr in response, making Tristan shrug his shoulders in indifference. After all, he understood where Valyr was getting at, recalling he had a phase like that as well in the far past. With that, Tristan opened up his screen and interacted with it for a bit, prompting a notification sound to resound within Valyr's mind. Though, at the very moment he looked at it, a frown could not help but appear on his face as he looked at Tristan, who looked back at him with a light yet mischievous chuckle. At the very least, you can't complain that I'm intentionally reducing the time remaining from the quest. Ding! The remaining time for the quest, an experienced blacksmith suggestion, 1, has been frozen by the quest giver. Can't you just give me the rewards for the quest right now? Valyr could not help but ask after looking at the notification. I could, but I'd rather eat breakfast first, Tristan replied as he lightly scratched his stomach. Seeing Tristan's action, Valyr's stomach could not help but rumble, prompting a light grin to appear on Tristan's face. It seems you've foregone breakfast just to get the rewards as soon as possible, eh? Well, Valyr scratched his head in response, letting out an awkward chuckle after being caught red-handed. Looking at Tristan with an awkward smile, he then suggested, how about we get some breakfast, then? Now you're speaking my language. Unsurprisingly, Tristan agreed to the suggestion, following Valyr as they headed to a nearby place that sold hot food in the morning. While eating their respective breakfasts, Tristan went ahead and asked Valyr what he had done to reach level 10 so quickly, to which Valyr recounted what he had during the past few days outside the village. Of course, Tristan could not help but look at Valyr with surprise written all over his face after that, wondering what kind of courage Valyr had to face against high-level monsters with his current level. Nevertheless, With some of his curiosity satisfied and his hunger satiated, Tristan didn't really have much complaints after that. After paying for their respective breakfasts, the two of them returned to the smithy and went inside, allowing Valyr to see a glimpse of the smithy that wouldn't normally be seen by people coming by. Without the roaring fire blazing within the furnace, there was a slightly chilling feeling to the entire sight before him, making him feel as if the smithy was abandoned. While Valyr was engrossed in the current sight, Tristan went ahead and opened his screen once more, interacting with it as he told Valyr, "Before I go change into my work clothes, let me give you the rewards from the quest. Since you've accomplished it far earlier than I thought you would, I'll give thrice the rewards I initially promised," he continued, a notification sound resounding within Valor's mind as he snapped back to reality soon after. Ding! You have completed the quest and experienced blacksmith suggestion. 1. Remaining time, 11 days, 9 hours, 11 minutes, 9 seconds. Due to your spectacular performance, the quest giver has decided to triple your rewards. Your affinity with Tristan has increased by 150 points. Current relationship, friend. Your reputation in Astardo village has increased by 450 points. Current reputation, well known. You have received 7,500 XP. You have received 45 technology points. You have gained the active skill analysis. With a smile adorning Valor's face after receiving the rewards, Tristan told Valyr to wait in the smithy for a while as he changed into his work clothes, leaving the latter to his own devices. I finally got my hands on analysis, Valyr muttered with slight glee, commanding the system to allocate all of the XP he had towards upgrading the skill to as high it could go. Ding! Would you like to spend 19,199 XP to upgrade analysis to level 7? As his eyes slightly widened in surprise at the fact that he had enough XP to raise analysis to such a high level, Valyr went ahead and confirmed the prompt. Deducting close to 20,000 XP from the XP he still left untouched as a small influx of information entered his mind sometime later. Quickly processing and organizing the information he had received in his mind, he then commanded the system to show him information regarding his newly upgraded analysis skill. Not long after, a screen appeared in front of his field of vision, prompting a satisfied smile to appear on his face as he threw its contents. Ding! Analysis level 7/10. Rarity, common. To understand the world around oneself is to be curious towards everything in one's surroundings. To seek greater knowledge is to peer through the curtain shrouding everything in existence. This skill allows the user to obtain detailed information on whatever target the user is using the skill on. The depth of the information obtained is reliant on the skill's level, as well as the resistance of the target towards the skill. Although there existed variants of analysis that allowed one to obtain far more detailed information, the reason why this skill was hailed as the utility skill all players and NPCs needed to have was due to the fact that it did not consume any mana to activate the skill, with the only downside being less information. However, that was easily remedied by upgrading and evolving the skill to its higher rarities, something every being did when they got their hands on analysis. Let's try it out, Valyr muttered to himself as he closed the skill description screen, unfurling the fabric tied around his torso to grab the spear affixed behind his back. Looking at the wooden spear before him, with dried blood covering most of its surface, he then activated the skill. Analysis. Ding! For a brief moment, a light blue tint covered Valor's eyes as he felt that his vision could peer through the surface of the spear, allowing him to view the very molecules that made up the spear he held. However, this feeling was ephemeral at best, disappearing a few seconds later as a screen containing information on the wooden spear he held soon appeared. Wooden spear, level 1. Rarity, common. Attack, 4/7. A spear given to those newly enlisted with the village guards of Astardo village, being deemed by most people as a training weapon until one could afford a proper weapon. Nevertheless, the material it is made of and the level of attention to it allows it to keep up in battle somewhat. Remarks: you have outgrown this spear. It is recommended you change to another spear. Asterisk, A rudimentary connection could be faintly sensed between the spear and the user. It is recommended to keep using the spear to solidify this connection. So, the connection I was feeling from the spear some time ago wasn't just my imagination. Huh? Reading the last few lines on the screen, Valyr could not help but look at the spear he held, a hint of excitement in his eyes. Although it might not seem much at the moment, he knew that this connection was incredibly important later on. In fact, in his previous life, a deep connection with one's weapon was one of the requirements for one to be part of the front lines in the final battle, something Valyr had achieved easily thanks to him being a blacksmith. In any case, since it's going to be difficult to cultivate a connection with another weapon this early on, I'll stick with this spear for now. After all, I'm pretty sure there's still a lot this spear has to give, he muttered, looking at the spear with a light smile. Soon after, Valyr closed the screen before him as he affixed the spear behind his back once more. Coincidentally, Tristan had appeared in front of Valyr at that moment, now in his work clothes. With a light smile, he told Valyr, "Before I give you your next task, let us tackle something else first. After all, you more or less need to access it if you want to continue." And that would be... Valyr raised his eyebrow, only for excitement to cover his face as he heard Tristan's response. The bread and butter of any blacksmith, of course. Tristan grinned. The technology tree. Whoosh. Just as he had finished saying those words, a large screen appeared in front of Tristan, which he turned around to allow Valyr to see what was on his screen. To no surprise, Valor's mouth went slightly agape at the sight before him, not expecting Tristan to have already gotten so far even though he had just recently ascended to rank 2. Aside from the progress he has made in the combat technology tree, almost all of the necessary basic advancements he would need until he reached rank 5 has already been unlocked. On top of that, he's already begun unlock intermediate advancements. Valyr could not help but think to himself, wondering how the man before him had obtained so much technology points even though he was still at a low rank. As someone who took the blacksmith class in his previous life, Valyr knew very well that the progression in the technology tree, specifically the production and innovation branches of the technology tree, was what mostly dictated the limits of a blacksmith. Although it would seem easy to progress through those two branches at first, with each advancement only needing a couple points at most, once one continued to progress further and further into their respective trees, it wouldn't be a surprise if one needed hundreds to thousands of technology points just to advance one level. Naturally, the same could be said for the combat technology tree, which also contained its own unique quirks and bottlenecks. Nevertheless, that was the reason why he looked at Tristan's technology tree with a slightly agape mouth, to which the latter misinterpreted as awe and surprise, but mostly curiosity towards what Valyr was looking at. Closing up the screen, Tristan went ahead and explained to him, "What I've shown to you is the technology tree, specifically the technology tree that you might have in the future. There are 3 major branches to the technology tree: combat, production, and innovation. However, as a blacksmith, you'll allocate most of your points towards the production and innovation branch," he continued. "Now, open up your technology tree and head to the production branch." Lightly nodding in response to those words, Valyr went ahead and did what he was told, prompting a screen to appear before him not long after. Technology tree, production branch. Available technology points, 45. Basic understanding. Blacksmithing LV, 1, costs 1 TP to unlock. Basic understanding. Alchemy LV, 1, costs 1 TP to unlock. Basic understanding. Tailoring LV, 1, costs 1 TP to unlock. At that moment, a great plethora of choices appeared before him, forming a long list of things he could unlock if he ever so chose to. Seeing Valor's engrossed expression as he looked at the screen, Tristan went ahead and snapped him back to reality. "Now, I want you to unlock basic understanding, blacksmithing. After that, try to unlock the things that appear after that." "All right." Inwardly nodding in response to those words, Valyr did what he told, consuming a technology point to unlock the thing Tristan told him to unlock. Ding! You have unlocked the advancement Basic Understanding, Blacksmithing LV1. As you have met the prerequisites, you have unlocked the following advancements: Basic Fire Control LV. 1. Basic Material Knowledge LV. 1. Basic Equipment Knowledge LV. 1. Basic Forging LV. 1. Basic Enhancement LV1. As he read through the notification he had received, he spared a bit of his attention towards the technology tree, noticing that 5 smaller branches had extended out of the advancement he had unlocked, a somewhat surprised expression appearing on his face because of that. Simultaneously, on the inside, Valyr could not help but let out a groan, feeling that their pace in exploring the technology tree was incredibly slow. Of course, he knew that he could set up his technology tree to the point that it would allow him to start forging equipment as soon as possible. After all, his memories from his past life were still intact for the most part, including the part where he went through the necessary advancements in his technology tree. However, even though he had shown Tristan that he had the talent and potential, the latter only knew him as that. He did not know that the knowledge and the experience of an expert blacksmith at all. With that in mind, Valyr went ahead and used 1 technology point each on the advancements that had just been unlocked, knowing that these advancements wouldn't unlock as he had to unlock a few advancements on the innovation branch before that. Ding! Sure enough, a notification appeared in front of him soon after, telling him the same exact thing he had in mind while unlocking the 5 advancements. You do not meet the necessary prerequisites to unlock the advancement. Tristan, it says that I don't meet the necessary prerequisites, Valyr said, to which Tristan lightly smiled in response. It was as if he was waiting for Valyr to say those words. Now, you might be wondering, what do I need to unlock since there's nothing else to unlock in the production branch? Said Tristan soon after. As Valyr nodded, he then replied with a grin. Well, here's the thing. The reason why I told you that a blacksmith's technology tree will mostly focus on progression between the production and innovation branch is because you can't progress in the production branch if you advance enough in your innovation branch. Knowing what kind of expression Tristan wanted to see, Valyr's eyes widened in surprise as he headed to the innovation branch of his technology tree. Looking at the advancements that he could currently unlock on the innovation branch, Valyr could not help but look at Tristan and tell him, but there's only 1 advancement here. Ding! Technology Tree Innovation Branch. Available Technology Points, 44. Basic Knowledge, Paleolithic Age, LV. 1. Costs 1 TP to unlock. Hearing Valyr's words, Tristan lightly chuckled. Go ahead and unlock it. You'll see. As a curious expression appeared on Valyr's face, he spent 1 technology point on the only advancement available on the innovation branch. A notification sound resounding in his mind soon after. Ding! You have unlocked the advancement Basic Knowledge, Paleolithic Age LV1. As you have met the prerequisites, you have unlocked the following advancements. Basic Knowledge, Neolithic Age LV. 1. Basic Fire Making LV. 1. Basic Stone Knowledge LV1, and more. Watching multiple branches extend out of the unlocked advancement in slight shock, Valyr looked at Tristan with faux surprise, giving off the feeling that he was wondering how the latter knew something like that was going to happen. Although Valyr already knew, Tristan went ahead and explained in a slightly prideful tone. It may not seem like it, but the advancement you just unlocked is the first advancement every being will unlock in the innovation branch if they want to progress through the various levels of technology. It's just like how unlocking basic understanding, blacksmithing, would allow you to progress through the levels of mastery in blacksmithing. Anyways, since you now know the basics of progressing through the technology tree, go ahead and unlock the necessary advancement from the innovation branch so you can unlock the ones on the production branch, he continued. In fact, that's the reason why I gave out a reward of 15 technology points on the quest, since there's so much to unlock before we can really start forging. Well, you did get triple the rewards from that quest, so it's up to you on how you allocate the remaining technology points you have after that. Tristan shrugged his shoulders once he was done. Just as he was about to head to the furnace at the back of the smithy, Tristan stopped in his footsteps before turning to look back at Valyr, who was going through the various advancements on the technology tree. You know what? Let me give you your next task while you do that. With that, a screen appeared in front of Tristan and interacted with it. A few seconds later, A notification sound echoed in Valor's mind as he went ahead and opened it. Ding! You have received a new quest, an experienced blacksmith suggestion, Tuta. Just as he had begun reading through the quest description, his eyes could not help but widen in shock as he could not help but look at Tristan. Are you serious? I don't even know how to wield a hammer properly.